those who are outside will come later. We will sing the song of Las Mañanitas. All right. So we're going to start singing Las Mañanitas to those who come late, which is everybody. Estas son las mañanitas que cantaba el rey David. Hoy por ser día de tu tenemos dos cumpleaños. Two birthdays today. Hoy por ser tu cumpleaños te las cantamos aquí. Despierten, Evelyn y Alexis, despierten. Miren que ya amaneció, ya los pajaritos cantan, la luna ya se metió. No vamos a cantar de llegas tarde otra vez, eso no, not nice. Okay, our next guest speaker is known for many of us through the Mission Diocese. I remember the first time I heard about Catholic Extension, I received a phone call when I was in Archdiocese of Mobile, and they said, do you know what Catholic Extension is? And I said, do you make calendars? You make calendars? And so that was the same response on the other side of the phone. They were laughing, and then they started letting me know a little bit more of what the Catholic Extension is. Mr. Joe Boland is the Vice President of Mission for Catholic Extension. Again, I can tell you all his titles and all his experiences, but that you can find out on your own. I like to introduce him as someone with a great commitment to ministry. And on my part, or our part as Hispanic Ministry, as someone who knows well where we have been about 10 years ago or more, the journey that we've made as Hispanics in the US, especially after a summit had in Boston about in 2011, and they made a commitment or a pledge to develop 100 leaders And I believe that Lily falls under that. And I'm in the same group with Lily from the Diocese of Savannah. I came to the Archdiocese of Mobile through that initiative as well. God had it all planned out. Both experiences have been a blessing to me. And so they promised I think that they still have some spots available to fulfill that promise. Just, helping us to dream and to think concretely. There are still some spots available. During these 10 years, through that initiative and many others, they have a lot to share with us. So I'm not gonna say anything else other than thank you for what you do, because besides your professionalism is your commitment to our Catholic identity. I remember sitting at a table and somebody asked you what they asked Mother Teresa, not that I'm saying that you're Mother Teresa of Calcutta, but they said, do you have to become Catholic to belong to that program? It was in Mississippi a couple of years when Cardinal Ramazzini came. And you said, no, you don't have to be Catholic. But the reason why we do it is because we are. So that's what I have seen in you on this past 10 years. Thank you again. José Boland.
Muchos me conocen por mi apodo, no solamente el calendar guy, pero yo soy Pepito de Chicago. Así me conocen en Chicago. I'm going to primarily speak in English here, but it's a wonderful. The history, I hope, is not lost on any one of us of what this place means, not only to this local community, but to those of us across the country. And I think that's appropriate because I want to speak not only about the past 10 years, but really even about the past couple of centuries here and what it's meant for us and where it's leading us. So as Olga mentioned, I come from an organization called Catholic Extension. Our mission is to work in solidarity with people to build up vibrant and transformative Catholic faith communities across the country. And what we are is primarily a fundraising organization. And we are fundraising on behalf of communities that might be very rich in faith, but very, very poor in resources. Wealthy in spirit and creativity, but underfunded in every way that is measurable as such. And I want to tell you a little bit about our organization and some of the things that we've done, it not to be self-referential, but because I think it's relevant to what I want to talk about today. So last year, our direct funding at Catholic Extension, our programs, our initiatives had a cumulative financial impact of $92 million to the church. That's what we put in our annual report. And over the years, we provided $1.5 billion thanks to the generosity of donors. It comes from people of faith across the country. And with those funds, we've helped build and repair 12,700 churches throughout the country, throughout our history. And so what that means is we've helped build and repair more churches through Catholic Extension than there are Starbucks stores in the entire United States. That's worth an applause, and also an applause for Starbucks as well, who keeps us all awake and caffeinated. But I'm sharing all of this with you for a reason. We have a birthday coming up at Catholic Extension. Next week, we're celebrating 117 years. And the laundry list of accomplishments that I just went through would not have been possible. And this is how we actually present our case to them. So in those programs that Olga just referenced, and I'll talk about a little bit later, we go to our donors and we say, you're investing in the church in the United States through Catholic Extension. And they believe that their investment in leaders, in church buildings and infrastructure, in church ministry among the poor, is an investment that is going to pay dividends for years to come. And so that's exactly the mentality that I believe the church needs to adopt when it comes to Hispanic ministry, when it comes to the development of Hispanic leaders, particularly among young adult Hispanic leaders. A small investment today will see a multiplying, compounding, even, I believe, exponential growth and return on investment for the church in the years ahead. This week, I'm going to be going to, or I should say next week, going to Castroville, Texas. It's a very small, kind of forgettable place on the outskirts of San Antonio that are working for Catholic Extension. We're taking them there on a pilgrimage. Now, you might ask yourself, why on earth would anyone go to a pilgrimage in a dusty town on the outskirts of San Antonio, Texas? But the fact is, there's a little retreat center that's there, and it's a place that has extraordinary significance in the history of Catholic Extension. And it's a reminder to us, and it'll be a reminder to them, that the seeds that we plant today are going to bear fruit for hopefully many, many years to come, just like the same people who came here and celebrated that first Mass all those many years ago. So just a little history. It was 1914, and some of you know who have roots in Mexico. That was during Mexico's revolution, the El Tiempo de los Cristeros, you know. The church was facing fierce persecution. Churches were being closed, seminaries being closed. There was violence against clergy. Sacraments were being outlawed. And many priests and bishops were, and religious sisters began fleeing the country, and they were coming to South Texas, to that area in what was then San Antonio. And very few people, especially Americans, were paying close attention to what was unfolding in Mexico, with the exception of one American Catholic leader whose name was Francis Clement Kelly. Now, Francis Clement Kelly was the founder of Catholic Extension, and he really believed it was unacceptable for us in the Western Hemisphere to be tolerating any kind of persecution of religious peoples. And so he actually went on and met with the president, at the time was President Woodrow Wilson, tried to lobby to stop the violence. He reached out to the readers of Extension magazine for financial support of the exiles who were coming in, helped pay the salaries of those priests and religious sisters who were temporarily outside of Mexico. And then the third thing that he did, he's actually founded a seminary right there in Castroville. And that's what we're going to see. And those seminarians were not only ordained and went back to Mexico, but some of them then went on and founded religious orders, and they founded parishes and other movements, many of which not only serve in present-day Mexico, but are also serving in the church in the United States as well. And so we could have easily ignored the struggles happening in this marginalized place, in a marginalized community, what was happening on the other side of the border. But because we recognized what was happening, invested, something happened that we're still reaping the benefits from today. And so this idea that of us becoming good stewards of the future by what we do in the present is exactly why we're taking our fundraisers to Castroville next week. And it's the notion that we want them to walk away with after we have that experience. So what I want to emphasize is that in our quest as a church for immediate results, which I know happens, right? We want to see something tangible and immediate happen through our efforts. And a lot of times we are able to accomplish that, but we can't ignore or lose sight of the longer term goals and those projects that will hopefully span generations. I don't know if some of you saw this article that just came out. I found it very interesting. It was in Commonweal magazine, and it was titled, "No Longer a European Export, How the Catholic Church Became Truly Global." And the article itself is very historical. It's an article about the emergence of church in places like Africa and Vietnam over the course of last century. And in it, they said Catholicism has become the most multicultural and multilingual institution in the world. And we have to remind ourselves that's something that did not happen overnight. And in that article, they quote a very young Joseph Ratzinger at the time, who of course went on to become Pope Benedict. And he predicted decades ago with this quote, listen to what he said: "We cannot yet imagine the riches to come when the charisms of Asia and Africa make their contributions to the whole church." And indeed, this is exactly what happened. And so from what I could glean from that article, the success of Catholicism taking root in these cultures and in people's hearts across the world essentially boiled down to one thing. It boiled down to the formation of leaders among the people. Leaders who looked like them, leaders who talked like them, represented their history, their culture, their values, and their traditions. That is what was essential to the church's coming of age in these new places around the world. And I think in the United States, it would benefit us to gain from some of this longer term perspective that clearly was at the root of how the church was thinking even a century ago, that long-term thinking. And I don't know if some of you have read yet the synodal thesis document that's kind of come out after all this listening that's been done this past year. I've just started to get into it myself, but the one thing that kind of leapt off the page at me is it indicated that we're having trouble reaching the marginalized, and that the fact that we're having trouble reaching the marginalized is contributing even more to the alienation of young people. And I want to say it's been organizations like CEPI that have been among those prophetic voices with us all along, reminding us to look at the opportunity that's in our midst with the emerging Hispanic community, especially with young adult Latinos. And it's organizations like CEPI that are giving voice to the reality that's on the ground, and pushing organizations like your dioceses and organizations like Catholic Extension to keep a close eye on the Hispanic community. In fact, we've looked at this data very closely. Catholic Extension works with 87 dioceses across the country, and the Hispanic population there is a greater share of the overall Catholic population than it is even in the rest of the church, and the Hispanic population continues to grow. So that's something that we're very much keeping our eye on. So when I look at that, I don't know about you, I think this talk is called Signs of Hope. I don't know how you can't feel a sense of optimism about that, about this young generation emerging, and share that optimism of the same optimism as that young Joseph Ratzinger, that it's only a matter of time until this giant generation of Latino Catholics brings their riches and their contributions to the whole church. But in order for us to realize that vision, we need to invest. And we need to invest urgently. I think a lot of you are friends with our buddy over at Notre Dame, Tim Matavina. And I think he said it so beautifully a decade ago, and I've repeated it over and over again. He says, how we pass on the faith to the children and grandchildren of Latino immigrants is the leading indicator of where the church will be 30 years from now. It's not just a priority for Hispanic ministry. The entire church needs to be involved. And so sharing the faith with our young people is important obviously across all ethnic and racial groups, but it's particularly important in the Hispanic community because of its youthfulness and because of its sheer size. And so helping Latino families pass on the faith to the next generation is one of the ethical questions that the church faces today. And it should be one of the main preoccupations really of all of our dioceses and organizations and institutions, Catholic Extension included, when we look at how do we bring about future vitality into the church. And I don't know that I can say right now that we're succeeding in this, right? Again, the synodal document just came out, is kind of indicating this already. But 2 weeks ago, we had a group of young adult leaders, many from the dioceses of the Southeast, but also from across the country. And we were gathered together, and these are the young adults that are in the pews. There are well-formed young adults. They're not only trying to get closer to Jesus, but they're trying to bring their friends closer to the church. And it really surprised us, the number one experience that they cited to us, that they talked about, was that they felt rejected, or at least not accepted by the church. And they weren't bringing up doctrinal stuff. I mean, obviously we know that that can be a stumbling block for a lot of people, but they were saying, we feel invisible. They felt that even something as simple as getting space in a parish hall was something that was like difficult and hard to achieve. And so if those who are formed and are in theory kind of the church insiders, young adults, if you will, and they're the ones feeling like this, how much more might those who aren't even in the pews be feeling that sense of alienation from the church? And so I think our issue in overlooking Latino young people, to bring it back to this topic, is that perhaps we're lacking in that long-term investment mentality. If we fail to understand that our well-being, our own prosperity is tied up with those who are on the peripheries. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this line over the years, and I've heard it explicitly, I've heard it a little bit more subtly, but I've heard this be spoken in one way or another. And I'm a little hesitant to repeat it in this group, but I'm hoping that in repeating this idea or this thought, I'll at least expose it for its ugliness and get it out there. And it goes something like this. Well, we don't have time for them because they really don't give much back to the church. And I imagine some of you have heard that as well. And implied in that somehow is that these young adults, they're falling short of our standards, or maybe they don't give enough back financially for us to be able to pay attention to them. And I think it's that short-sightedness that is what really, really needs to be challenged by all of us. Instead, we need to commit ourselves to building a church where young people of every culture, of every ethnicity, of every economic level can discover and nurture God's calling in their life. And only in doing so do I believe that we can truly, truly exceed and succeed and thrive. One little final story here. Just last week, I was in East Tennessee. It's in the Diocese of Knoxville. And I was very encouraged. I was at a little town called Irwin, Tennessee, St. Michael the Archangel. It's a relatively new parish. It's about 80% Latino. It's growing. And until a couple of years ago, there was no Catholic church in that particular county. And Bishop Stika donated the land for the church to be built there. And it's a beautiful, extensive property. There's plenty of room for the community to grow. Catholic Extension helped with a construction grant to get the thing finished. But let there be no doubt that this whole project came about because a bishop, a diocese, a team of people saw some investable opportunities. They saw some potential in a place that maybe others would have overlooked, and they believed it was worth taking the risk on this little community. And so I ask you this question: how many more Irwin, Tennessees are out there? How many more are out there that are ripe for investment, which will grow and pay dividends over the years? How many more young adults are ready to come forward if we would just give them the space, the time, the resources that they need to serve, to fulfill their God-given call? And so for its part, Catholic Extension, Olga mentioned this, over the last 10 years, we made a particular and special commitment. It has totaled so far $7.5 million. It established new positions for Hispanic lay leaders across the country. We know that initiative touched the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And I was happy at the Quinto Encuentro in 2018 to see that many of those same leaders were still in active ministry. And so we followed up with these investments. We are now at the point where we have invested in 150 Latina sisters, and still more coming, and supporting their salaries, their university degrees as they serve the Hispanic population across the United States and here in the Southeast dioceses. We've supported Spanish language diaconate in many dioceses. We're funding the university degrees, some of these fine people over here, and many more young students. And in the coming year, we're going to be extending more educational opportunities to Latino women through a program called Mujer Valiente. You'll hear more about that tomorrow when my colleagues come. And finally, we're funding religious education and ministry in hundreds of poor parishes across the country. we've learned through these experiences, to give this some conclusion, is that if you invest, the people in whom you are investing will pay forward those gifts. And they'll pay forward those gifts not only for their own community, but I really believe for the entire Catholic Church. Our 117-year history as we celebrate our birthday at Catholic Extension has proven this model to us over and over and over again. And so I just want to thank all of you in this room, who your dioceses and the organizations you represent, for the ways in which you have deliberately and strategically invested in Hispanic Catholics. And I urge you to continue to do so. And for its part, I pledge the solidarity of Catholic Extension to work with your dioceses, to help resource your leadership, your ministry, your infrastructural needs, as a Catholic Church, as you support this vital and very useful population of Latinos who are a great, great blessing to the Catholic Church. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, and safe journey. We are going to move into a different part of, those of you who are familiar with Mardi Gras, it's good to get into that because this will be a parade, but a beautiful one, more beautiful than the ones in New Orleans and Mobile, with all the love that I have for Mobile. This is what, there are a lot of beautiful things happening, and we're celebrating that through sharing best practices. That's what we're going to do in the next time, in the next chunk of time that we have together. We wish we could display all of them, but these are the ones that we're going to share. I'm sure that when we have conversations at our tables, we get to share more. If at the end there is new things that you want to add, please do so, because at the end of the encuentro, we will give you back all the whatever we gather from here, so it will be beneficial for all. And we welcome Bishop Holmeyer, who is our host. Thank you so much for welcoming us in your diocese. So we're going to start with formation. Oh, yes, with the video. Thank you.
My dear brothers and sisters in the Lord, I'm sorry that I'm not able to be with you at this gathering today, but I do want to greet and welcome you to the regional encuentro from the Southeast region. You know, one of the things that we have been focusing on in our diocese in St. Petersburg is trying to work in collaboration versus working in silos. We recognize that all of our ministries are connected in some way. And so we try to involve ourselves, not only in our particular area of ministry, but also to make sure that we're walking in step with the other ministries here in our diocese. Our vision here in the Diocese of St. Petersburg is courageously living the gospel. And one of the things that we've been focusing on is trying to strengthen the bridges that bring together the Hispanic ministry with all of the other offices of our pastoral center. We respond better to all diversity that continues to grow in our diocesan community. Like many dioceses, we are culturally diverse, which is beautiful and also something that we celebrate in our diocese. We find strength in our diversity as missionary disciples who proclaim the gospel and invite all people to encounter Christ. That's why I've sent 5 of my directors to this regional encuentro to participate and share what we're doing, but also to learn things and bring them back here to the Diocese of St. Petersburg. Know that I ask God's blessing upon you as you gather. And may the Lord always continue to lead and guide us as we courageously live the gospel and do his will. May God bless you.
That was Bishop Parks from the Diocese of St. Petersburg. And yes. And this is sometimes we look at our bishops and we just immediately go like this. But each one of them, and I want to say this, don't smile like that, Archbishop, get me nervous. But sometimes we just get to see them as either our boss or somebody that is distant. But I really believe that if we look at them just that way, we're missing out on a lot. These men have said yes and are carrying on their shoulders a lot of weight. And so the minimum we can do is pray for you. Thank you for who you are, for what you do, and for what you take to prayer as well, which is many times the burdens of our church, but also the dreams as well. And so I'm very grateful for Bishop Parks, who also took the time to make that video and share it with us. He couldn't be here with us today, but he's definitely in spirit with us. And thank you for being here too. We love you. So in our best practices, we're going to be listening from different perspectives. And I want to say this because sometimes we don't understand what CEPI is. I'm trying to understand as we go, but there are three words that are important keywords for CEPI, and one of them is formation, evangelization, and communion, those three words. 44 years ago, when CEPI, not much going on in the Southeast. We know through the process of the National Encuentros that regional offices were created around the year 78 onwards. Our office was created then. We have a dual identity, I guess, yes. The Archbishop Wensky missed beautiful words that I. So it had a dual identity and still does, and is the regional office that belongs to the bishops, and that is its function is Hispanic ministry, right? Formation, evangelization, communion. And the other one is the Pastoral Institute of the Southeast. But beautiful things have happened in 44 years, and some dioceses have their programs of formation, which is what I would love to see happening all across the Southeast. The more, the merrier. I think that would give us, I guess, eventually keep us out of job, but that's fine. What we want is for our communities to get that backbone that I was listening, Archbishop Wensky, that backbone, and besides the experience of the risen Lord, formation is very important. So we are going to invite first Father Duvan Bermudez, Director of Hispanic Ministry from the Diocese of Palm Beach, and he comes with his banner.
Hi everybody, how are you? Are you okay? No sleep for everybody? No, okay. Thank you. It's my time for you to explain a special little program that we have created in our Diocese of Palm Beach 27 years ago, a School of Christian Formation. We're running this program in two ways, and in Spanish and in English. But in Spanish, we have it for migrant programs. And especially our School of Christian Formation started first for migrants and little houses in a special place in our diocese. The people were warm in a special farm, especially the cane of sugar, and more Mexican and Guatemalan people, they don't have any information. For the reason, Sister Regina, because she started our School of Christian Formation, decided to bring this special program in many houses. Program, I told you, and migrants. This is the actual program for this year in School of Christian Formation in English and also in Spanish. You can see the special table. Okay, we bring now. At the end, you can take a minute. Thank you. Thank you, my dear sisters. Now we have a new brochure for promote the School of Christian Formation in English and in Spanish. This program is very simple. 3 years. Everybody says, oh, Father, 3 years? Yes, but only 3 years. You can see the year 1. We had the introduction of the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, and Christology. 4 classes, and each class is 6 weeks only. 6 weeks per class, 2 hours every week. It's very simple. And the aim in the each class, all the students receive these special certificates that they was participating in our 6th class everything. The second year, the Council of Vatican II, Ecclesiology, Liturgy and Sacraments, and Morality. Sometimes I say that my teachers, please, you're the teacher of morality. It is very important. You're the student not lost their morality through your classes. Very important for them. and the third year, history of the church and also social justice is very important. Spirituality and pastoral ministry and evangelization, because when they end this special program, they will receive 2 certificates or 2 diplomas. One from the office of the catechesis of the life ministry, family life. They receive the special catechesis that the bishop approved and assigned them as a catechesis in English or in Spanish. And the second diploma certificate is for our school, for my office, that they receive this special formation for 3 years. This is very simple program. I have laid the books that we use only for, you can check it out, the books that I use in English and in Spanish. And also you can share these special QRs, that these QRs are in all our bulletins, in our parishes, in our diocese, because they have the direct connect with our office. Conéctate con nosotros, connect with us. If the people can use this QR and connect our Facebook that we have it, and also our webpage, but only for in Spanish. And also, and then you heard that you can check it out. When you go to the website for the Diocese of Palm Beach, you can find the history about our School of Christian Formation and little presentation for our School of Christian Formation. What is the goal of the School of Christian Formation? To nourish and knowledge, to enable participants, to explore more character teacher, and to create more participation. And also, you can find the courses for the students. What is the program that we present, this special program in our Diocese of Palm. First years, and second year, and the third year, and then you find also this special. Yes. This is the program that I shared you before. You can find this program depending on the School of Christian Formation in English or in Spanish or for Christian migration. And also after that, we continue the deep formation, the second level. Second level is 9 months, every first Saturday to English Spanish program, and second Saturday a Spanish program. 3 hours, 9 to 12, and we have a special teacher. And I have teachers, priests, deacons, nuns, and also lay people. And also sometimes many teachers for our seminary, the San Vincent de Paul in our seminary, they are teachers too in our School of Christian Formation. This is my big challenge, to continue catching more teachers from our School of Christian Formation. Okay, thank you so much for your time for us. And this is a special program for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Father Duan.
And sometime every year we have before 2 minutes more. Sorry. Before to start Before to start our program, I had a special dinner appreciation for all teachers. And also I like to give them something. Last year, for example, I give you the special for another challenge for the pandemic. I think what happened. Close the school, I don't know. Okay, I decided to start on online classes. What amazing, special during the COVID to online classes. The first class was training my teachers in English and Spanish. How can you Zoom? How now? Okay, we were crazy the first month, but after that, everybody learned and continued their classes. I appreciate my teacher that spend time every year to help us to give a good information for our parishioners in English and Spanish or for making too. Thank you so much. 2 minutes, thanks.
He's also Colombian. We want to introduce now Dr. Sedona from the Diocese of Knoxville. She comes from a different perspective now, with a different perspective, and that is Catholic schools. She's the superintendent for the Catholic schools for the Diocese of Knoxville in Tennessee. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Two disclaimers. I feel grossly inadequate about doing this in front of the bishops. All of the bishops, you all make me nervous. And all of you all who are such experts. The second disclaimer is I only have 10 minutes. I am not known for brevity. I am passionate about Catholic school education, so forgive me on the front end for that. What I'm going to say to you, and this is really the Holy Spirit, because I was really given little direction as to what you wanted to hear about best practices. But so what I'm going to tell you is things that you've been hearing all along from all of from the bishops to priests to the different speakers. And so it has to be right because the Holy Spirit is working through all of us to share it. I have been involved in Catholic school education for 26 years now. And almost all of that time, I have had a passion for ministry to, I guess, the marginalized, not just Hispanic, but all of them, because that's what Catholic school educators are called to do. I want to just draw your attention to something that was the Congregation for Catholic Education wrote in 2013. It was educating to intercultural dialogue in Catholic schools. And this is a quote from that. I like to read a lot of things. So as I said, none of this is my own. This is things that I have read or integrated into. Communities that draw their inspiration from the values of the Catholic faith, families, schools, groups, youth organizations, etc., must give voice in reality to an education truly based around the human person, in line with Christian humanist culture and tradition. There must be a new commitment to the individual seen as person in communities and a new sense of his or her belonging to society. So that's what we're called to do. And for a long time, the key question that we have been asking in Catholic schools, or that have been asked of us, is how do we invite our Hispanic brethren into our schools? How do we invite, or how do we cultivate environments that create diversity and a unified community that reflects our parishes, that looks like our parishes? We've been asked that for a while. And I would put to you, the fundamental question for all of us in ministry is not just about communication or processes, but rather at the heart is the fundamental law of being. The first action of the educator or the minister is to love. Therefore, there has to be a strategic link between love of education, love of our ministry, love of our church, with education or ministry to love. So with this in mind, the question must be with our Catholic schools, what can Catholic schools, or you can substitute ministry, Pastor Juvenal, whatever ministry they're in the diocese do to love all people? So all schools invite investment, involvement, and especially a real sense of ownership of these schools from all families. Next slide. So how do we do that? Cultivating investment, involvement, and ownership. Before any practical initiatives, there must be unity that lives among the individuals in groups. From an intercultural view, the finest gift that Catholic school education can make to school is that of witness. Catholic schools give witness to a constant personal network of relationships. I would argue that we have the best opportunity to minister to the whole family. That Catholic schools do that because we get children. In our schools, we have children as young as 6 weeks old. So we start with baptism all the way up. We work through the sacraments with them, and we are there, and we go with them all the way through college, and the families come back to us and continue to serve in our schools as volunteers and that sort of thing. So we have an opportunity for a lifelong. So the first thing, give witness to that personal network, and it's a task of supporting individuals. Accompaniment. Pope Francis talks a lot about accompaniment, and I know in the fifth encuentro that was one of the key themes is accompaniment. And I believe wholeheartedly that that's what we're called to do is accompany. Schools can capitalize on this social relationship and network by involving all the stakeholders in the mission of the school. And I think Dr. Ospino talked about that involvement, the ownership. These efforts facilitate strong community connections that lead many people to describe their Catholic school as their extended family. And that's really what we're cultivating. From research, Epstein and colleagues outlined 6 primary types of community involvement. These types are first, parenting. Catholic schools have a responsibility to help all families establish home environments that support children as students and as young adults or leading to young adults. Second is communicating. Catholic schools must design effective forms of school to home and home to school communications about the school program and children's progress, especially in the target languages. Whatever those home languages are, we have to do that to communicate. Volunteering. Catholic schools should recruit and organize parent help and support by all families, considering their transportation limitations or their work environment. Many families have two jobs or maybe one car. And so they can't come and volunteer during the normal, regular times, but they can serve and they want to be involved too. Learning at home. Catholic schools should provide information and ideas to family about how to help students at home with homework and other curriculum-related activities, decisions, and planning. Fifth, decision-making. Catholic schools should include parent and schools decision and in the development of parent leaders and representatives. When we have focus groups, when we have surveys, we have to make sure that we're getting the input of everybody, that they have a voice. And sixth, collaborating with the community. We need to identify and integrate resources in our church and in our larger community that help support medical needs, health needs, housing needs, all of those needs. We can provide that resource. We are educators that can help tap them into these community outreach programs if they need it, so that we can further minister to that family. So what are the practical best practices that each in every school can implement? And some of these I've mentioned, but one of them, parent education offered through the school or parish or facilitated by local agencies at the school and parish. When I first started really getting involved with Hispanic ministry back in early 2001, 2002, one of the things that we did at the school that I was principal is we started having English language classes on campus because so many of my parents wanted to learn English, but they had no ability. We had it at our parish. And that was something that got them in. Connect with Catholic charities, St. Vincent de Paul societies, as I said, to help get health and nutrition. Home visits at key points of transition. During the pandemic, our children, even though we went back to school, we were only shut down or we were at home for about 2 months. We were on site at schools, but our teachers made home visits because during that 2 months, we had families and children that became ghosts, that kind of disappeared, and we didn't let them. So we made home visits. Bilingual office staff and teachers, translators for conferences and paperwork, all communication shared routinely in home languages, and Also provide access to information to other resources and network with them. We follow the model of the Los Padrinos model, the godparents model. It's put out by the University of Notre Dame, where we try to train leaders to be a madrina or a padrino to our families, because we need all the help that we can get. And there are our ambassadors within the community. Create volunteer opportunities for all to share, and continue to have opportunities for families to be involved in the decision making. Finally, we ask these questions. Who do our Catholic schools serve, and whose needs do our Catholic schools best serve? And when I ask that question, I'm not just talking about Hispanics, I'm talking about everybody that's marginalized, those that are disabled, those that are other. As Catholic school educators, we have to recognize and always embrace that our parents are the first educators. That's our church teaching. And to be responsible leaders, we are going to defer to that and work with them. And that's one of the things that I believe is very unique and special. You hear on the public sector about parents want to have control or own their children's education, but we encourage that, not just encourage that, we live that out. So in order for Catholic school leaders to chart a course, we need to help our staffs be culturally proficient, all of them. And as Dr. Espino will put, we need to cultivate talent and hire and recruit people that look like our students and look like people in our parishes, not those that just look like me. Culture is a predominant force in people's lives. The dominant culture serves people in varying degrees. And people have both identities and group identities, and we need to recognize that and embrace that and help our teachers embrace that. Diversity within cultures is vast and significant. And each individual and each group has those unique cultural values. I'm from the South. I'm from Tennessee, a native Southerner. I have a culture of the South. May be very different from my Southern father, Arthur, who's from Columbia, who's really from the South. But I have a culture, we all do, and we have to embrace and let each child bring that out. Finally, and lastly, our schools must always honor and revere the sanctity of the family and each family's culture. And this can happen through creating environments with culturally competent teachers and faculty members by respecting traditions and instituting practices that celebrate these different cultural traditions, and by always meeting families and students where they are, educationally, socially, emotionally, physically. After all, we are accompanying them on this journey, and that's what we're called to do. Thank you.
And so we know that the Ascension Press has the Bible in a year, or yes, the Bible in a year. And Father Mike Schmitz is the one that's done it. So we have the version in Spanish, and is the director of Hispanic Ministry for the Archdiocese of New Orleans, Father Sergio Serrano. He's not the version, he's his own version.
I am very nervous because the bishops are here too. You can tell how nervous I am.
We need to stop saying that, they won't come anymore.
I don't know if you know Ascension Press. I have seen many things that they do in English. I think they do a fantastic work. I used to follow Father Mike. I was listening to what he used to read every day, and he was too fast, right, for my Hispanic ears. And one day I got a call in December that the guy that they have hired for Spanish dropped off. They wanted me to do the job. And my first chapter was recorded in Colombia, and I accepted the challenge just because of one reason. Do you know the prayer of San Francis de Assisi? Yes. Do you know what Loyola did? He created the spiritual exercises. Do you know what Dominic did, San Dominic of Guzman? No, he didn't do the rosary. The rosary was inspired to him. He only preached the word. And I'm a Dominican, so I feel a big responsibility to preach the word of God. And I promise you, I'm going to ask you a question. Don't feel forced to respond to this. Who in this room has read the Bible from beginning to the end? You have to be honest to yourself, not to me. Most of us, we talk about the Bible, we put programs, we talk about Jesus, but we don't know his word, we don't know the Bible. It's the only reason why I accepted this challenge to do the chapters every day. Most Catholics, most of us who work in these offices, we haven't. It's the truth. And I think this is very important that we do this work, and actually they create a timeline that is a very important piece for us, because what they have done is they have picked 14 books that are going to be the core books to follow the story of salvation. Sometimes what we do is that we read the Bible and we get bored because we go back and forth. We don't know what the order is. That happened to me several times. When I saw this that was put together by Jeff Cavins, it really makes sense in my head. And when I saw how they divided the books and how we can read the Bible and make sense that I understand what is the story of salvation, the history of salvation, I decided to say yes. My first chapter was recorded after a Christmas party celebration in Colombia, where music is really loud. From then on, I have recorded every chapter. Some chapters I recorded in Jerusalem, some in Oslo, some in Paris, some in New Orleans, some in Biloxi, some in Yakima, one in Lafayette. I go all over the country. And I think this is important that we take the word everywhere we go. And if we don't know the word of God, what are we passing on to people in our ministries? What are we passing? So it's what I decided to do this. And they divided this program in 12 different moments that will help us. And they come with colors, they come with stories, but they come with beautiful things. They created a Bible. It's an expensive Bible. For some people, it's $55 or something like that. For me, it's expensive. I am a religious. Second collection after I finish. So this is important that we help people to get close to the word. That the word is what inspires everything that we do. We can do many, many good things, but if we don't talk about Jesus, it's philanthropy. We talk about Christianity because in everything we do, the word is the center. And it's something that we can forget very easy. So this is how they divide it. Each color brings a moment of history, and it comes with the books. I try to give an introduction. I try to give a concluding segment. I spend like 7 minutes, 3 at the beginning or 3 to 4 at the end, and the rest of the time is the reading. People don't like to read today. It's good to put it in the card. You can use it in any kind of way. You can ask me, and I will send you this link. You can put it in your web page. Many web pages in the planet now has it. I receive comments from Japan, from India, from Germany, from Norway, from Spain, from every other place. They use it, except in my own diocese. No, in the Dominican webpage, it's not, but it's every other place. Nobody is appropriate on land, right? It's not in Seppi's page, even though I work with Seppi, but that's all right. Here we go again. Yeah. But it's in every other podcast. If you go to the Bible in a year, you will find it. I have received so many responses from people that have transformed their lives, that is helping. I am an unworthy servant that doesn't know what he's doing. Actually, I am 296 beginning last night in my room, and it's 365. So I am 75 programs away from finishing. Whew. Finally, because this is a 4 hours. Thank you. Thank you. It's 4 hours that I have to, only 2 people are happy about that. But you can find it, it's free. It's free. Catholic Ascension Press is using the ones who doubled the movies for Hollywood. They are paying big money to Mexico. I record here, I send it to them, they edit, they send me the corrections, they put it in high definition mode, They do the typing for Facebook, for YouTube, for all that. They are paying thousands of dollars to do this, and it's free for us Hispanics. So let us take advantage of this moment. The work that Ascension Press does is professional. I have never seen something like that, and now they want to come into the Hispanic world. If we give a good response to this, it's going to be a chance for many of you to put things out there that are going to serve the larger community. So that is my invitation. You can go and sign into ascensionpress.com slash the Bible. They will send you the whole program. Is free. You can buy the Bible and you can send me a donation. I live in New Orleans, so or you can give it to me here personally. I think that's all that I have for you. I am nervous because the bishops are here. So.
So I'm gonna have to, now we're going, thank you, Father Sergio. I love the fact that we feel relaxed. That means we feel at home because our bishops are here. The next best practices that we're going to be sharing are on family life ministry. And we're going to invite Sister Joan Pearson from the Diocese of Charlotte. Yes.
Thank you, Olga. Okay, I hope I can get through this with my nervousness about being here with all these bishops. Sorry, I couldn't resist that thought. Actually, before I even begin this, I want to underscore something that Dr. Ospino was talking about, the value of WhatsApp. Now, just very briefly, this is how we got through COVID and the whole pandemic in our diocese. These are all groups or community leaders that have contact to groups in our diocese. You can do broadcast mode where people do not necessarily, I'm not even finished my whole list yet. Anyway, WhatsApp is actually a great way if you want to get the word out to the Hispanic community because everybody uses it. Well, okay, I'm not going to look at you, no offense. Okay. Our best practice. We have an issue in our diocese with an awful lot of wonderful, wonderful people. We're a relatively young diocese. This year we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. In our diocese, and it's a great year for us, we have about 300,000 faithful Hispanics in our diocese. A lot are in construction, landscaping, furniture, Christmas tree farms, North Carolina, the western part, produce farms, hospitals, cleaners, all of those jobs, which did suffer during the pandemic, during COVID, but we also had to respond to it. And a lot of our people had to go to work, obviously, for these sort of jobs. Our population in North Carolina, just to sort of set what I'm going to talk to you about, what I'm going to present as one of our best practices, our population is young, very young. We completely reflect the idea that, the median age is around 25 to 35. I am usually the only one with gray hair when I go to any community. Well, maybe some have supernatural dark hair, but mine is naturally gray. But it's a very young community. Our population of Hispanics has exploded. About a year ago, Father Julio Dominguez was talking with some of the pastors and realized that they had this massive problem. Our people would come to them, and we have young people, so of course we have families, couples. We don't always have the, marriage first, then the children. We have the whole families come, then the marriages. And in talking with our priest, and again, we're blessed, 92 parishes, we have 135 diocesan priests. Of our diocesan priests, only 10 are Hispanic. I kind of looked up these statistics. We have approximately 1,765 Catholics per priest in our diocese, 1,765 people per priest. And the priest came to Padre Julio, our diocesan director, who's sitting right there, and they expressed to him, because most of them, with only 10 who are Hispanic, they expressed to him, when people come to us, when these couples come to us, who we wish to accompany, we can't understand what they're saying, we can't understand what their problems are. And then there's the whole cultural aspect. So Padre Julio came up with this idea. We were going to establish this acompañantes matrimoniales to help the pastors. I had a pastor at that point who called me in, who would call me into some of his talks because he couldn't understand more than the beginning of the talk with a couple. And he would just need somebody to translate for him. And then to help him give suggestions, his pastoral counseling to the couples. Well, it was bad enough for the couples, but he was even more embarrassed when they would get into, like, you know, what he wants me to do, the pornography issues. I mean, that's the reality that our dear people are living with. And when they come for counsel and pastoral guidance from them, it's pretty essential that the poor guys who are good priests have some help understanding what their issue is. So we came up with this plan. Oh, and it's there already. We're lucky because 2 bishops ago, Bishop Curlin mandated that in our diocese, there would be DSA, Diocesan Support and Appeal money dedicated to putting in every one of the 10 vicariates a Hispanic coordinator who would serve as the resource for the pastors if they need anything, if they needed resources in Spanish for their people, retreats, preparations for sacraments, preparations for liturgical ministers. So we have one coordinator. Sergio's here. I used to be a coordinator, and then I got moved to helping Padre Julio and Charlotte, so my picture's not up there, but anyway. We had somebody in Albemarle, this little abandoned vicariate over here, but every time somebody was assigned there, they would get transferred. Or if it was a priest, they were made a pastor. We just cannot keep priests in that little part of the vicariate. So we already had the structure in place. What with WhatsApp and what with training, we knew we could get to all the people in our diocese quickly. And so Padre Julio cooked up this idea. We designed a program where we would train representatives from every single vicariate to serve as a committee that would help in their vicariate, be of service to their pastors. The first thing is, and again, let me say, the first thing I have up there, this is to help the priests who don't understand the language or the culture. The second objective was, we had to find people who the pastors recognized as being solid in their marriages and who were available, who were somewhat mature in their marriages, who were accepted by the community, because the Hispanic community is very much in relationship with one another. So it was critical that they were accepted as a couple who could accompany them. Then the pastors had to trust the couples who were trained. We went through a rigorous program. Gabby, the next one. Now, we brought these couples together. We had them we had a psychiatrist and his wife, a practicing clinical psychologist, who designed the program. It was all this year. We planned it last year. We started this year. It was intense. They would come together monthly for entire days for a retreat that was 2 days long. And there's wealth of material, like 2 binders that are huge. This is, I have a couple of pictures here. Okay? It was not all, well, there was a lot of hugging and kissing. I've read books. But anyway, there was also a whole lot of fun as we went through this program. A lot of sharing, but they were learning. They were learning communication skills. They were learning how to come apart. At the very beginning, I was stunned and I thought, how are we going to do this? Look at all the materials. There were about 900 pages for just the first weekend that we had to copy off for everybody. Well, we linked with, in our diocese, with Catholic Charities because they have established already counseling department. So we got ideas from them and made a connection with them. Now, you have to understand, our young diocese, we have wonderful departments. We did not necessarily talk to each other. Schools did their thing. Catholic Charities did their thing. Probably your dioceses are all smooth running. Ours work well, but we don't get together that often. So we linked with Catholic Charities. We then went with the newly established Family Life Ministry because Family Life, Pastoral Familiar, is a priority of Bishop Peter Jugas, and he was really strong on this. We linked with them, and then for the funding, I hit up our development department because they've got the money, we needed it. It was an initiative. So what we did was we went to the development department and found an endowment that fit into exactly what we were trying to do to strengthen families. So I know it can be done. I don't know if you guys all hit up your development departments, but anyway, that's how we got this. Now, as luck would have it, well, not as luck would have it because I asked them to put it in your little folders. Everybody has this handout. In a nutshell, this explains everything that we shared with the priests, the pastors, prior to beginning this program. The requirements, what we were hoping to do, our goals and objectives, and how we would evaluate the success of the program, and very importantly, sustainability of the program. Because without those elements, we can have great programs, but not necessarily, they won't live on past the initial phase. That's Padre. Would you like to add anything?
I think that the pastors are very grateful about that. And we are responding to one thing that it really was something that was happening in many parishes. And the pastors were calling to us how we can help the families, and we don't have anything to do, but just this program will be very helpful for our diocese.
Thank you. And that is true. Without this, a lot of the pastors would have been lost with the understanding. It's not that they don't have a wonderful heart, but the language in our diocese at least is still a bit of a hurdle, and the culture. So that's it. Thank you.
We're going to invite one more person, and then we're going to have a brief break so we can stretch and continue listening. But please, let's continue centered. That's right. Ms. Diane Kletzik from the Diocese of St. Petersburg is going to share best practice from her diocese. Thank you.
So it's not a best practice. Based on what our bishop had said in his video message, I'm kind of breaking that open. And I'm just really grateful for this opportunity. What I'm going to share with you is a story, which is a story of many stories, but it's just one illustration how in our diocese that we really try to work in unity with the diversity that we have. And so just grateful for your time. So it begins with 1 Corinthians 12 to 26. A really great passage to describe the family system in its development and diversity. The health of the family depends on its members functioning to their full potential. And when they aren't, seeking to help what it needs to thrive, when any part is missing or suffering or choosing not to connect. Some parts of this passage that really stick out for me. As a body is one, though it has many parts, and all the parts of the body, though many, are one body, so also in Christ. But as it is, God placed the parts, each one of them in the body as he intended. But God has so constructed the body as to give greater honor to it, a part that is without it, so that there may be no division in the body, but that the parts may have the same concern for one another. If one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. If one part is honored, all parts share its joy. This is also a great passage to describe the gift that the process of the fifth encuentro has been for the church. Giving focus to one general area or part of the body has illumined strengths and weaknesses in other parts of the body of Christ. The entire body, the church, functions best when the blood is flowing to all its parts, enabling it to work to its potential in a healthy system. In 2018, alongside the fifth encuentro process, our Diocese of St. Petersburg was embarking on a mutually shared vision called Courageously Living the Gospel. Both processes held up family ministry as one ministerial area of focus, and it even brought about a shifting of responsibilities and roles in our diocese, as I was moved from directing evangelization to directing family life, a position that had been vacant for a lot of years. So following the fifth National Encuentro in Texas, I set out to learn more about my new area of ministry responsibility. I kept listening, studying, showing up, reaching out, and asking questions. As the church was awaiting the compilation and printing of the proceedings and conclusions of the fifth encuentro, so what that looks like, it's also available outside there. My colleagues and I already knew that formation was greatly needed for parish leaders to better understand and implement a family perspective in their ministry areas. Being a new member of the National Association of Catholic Family Life Ministers, also affectionately known as NACFAM, I inquired about the Ministry of Families 101 training in both Spanish and English to meet this immediate formation need. I was easily sold on its value, and I knew that I would not and could not venture into this alone. I shared my hopes for this training and for the collaboration with my colleagues in youth ministry and faith formation and Hispanic ministry. Since this training was going to be offered in Spanish and English, Carlos, our Hispanic ministry director at the time, and I invested a lot of time into finding the right fit for offering this 2-day-long training simultaneously. Should we offer it on weekends or weekdays? How will we fund this? At what cost? What location could hold 2 separate audiences? How would we serve food? What food would we serve? What about accommodations for presenters? How will we invite, advertise, and register participants? Although I took the lead on this project, I never planned in a vacuum. I learned a lot from Carlos as we shared perceived needs of our audiences, and we took risks to move leaders to see, discern, and act in new ways. We created the atmosphere for each of us to be our best ministry selves in the roles in which we serve, as we were doing the challenging work of journeying together. As this training was taking shape, the printed copies of the proceedings and conclusions of the fifth encuentro became available. We made plans to continue our work with the delegates of the fifth encuentro as a collaborative team. As our March 2020 efforts at advertising for Ministry with Families 101 were ramping up for the June training, we were also planning gatherings for our encuentro delegates and diocesan ministry leaders, and everything came to a halt. We were forced to do things differently if we wanted our efforts to continue. I remember traveling to places all throughout the diocese, just trying to get the proceedings and conclusions books into the hands of our delegates as COVID-19 was spreading quickly and the world was shutting down. We delivered the books to the front porches of homes, to cars in mall parking lots, and through some common friends traveling in various directions. Yes, we were careful to stay 6 feet apart. We didn't know how we could get it at that time. Ministry of Families 101 as an in-person training in 2020 was canceled. I urged and encouraged the presenters from NACLAM to consider offering this training through Zoom. But that was going to take some time and thought and a lot of energy. The whole dynamic would have to change. So we continued to move on with our plans with the proceedings and conclusions of the fifth encuentro, aligning the material with our key courageously living the gospel areas of focus: missionary discipleship, youth and young adult ministry, and family ministry. Delegates joined one of the 3 ministerial area teams, and individuals spent time in reading, discerning, and choosing which recommendations seemed to be the most urgent to address in our diocese. My team was focused on building up ministry with a family perspective in our parishes. Our Zoom calls were outstanding. We shared what stood out for each of us, what we thought we needed to focus on, and what we thought was missing in providing a holistic approach to family ministry. Delegates served as translators for those who didn't understand English, and for me, who needed help with the Spanish. We put in the time and the hard work, and we were patient with one another. I learned about marriage and family ministries happening throughout our diocese, like Diálogo Matrimonial, or MDS, Marriage Dialogue Support. Additionally, in continuing the process of collaborative discernment through Pastoral de Conjunto, or ministry together, my fellow colleagues spent many hours helping to narrow down our focus to 10 conclusions and recommendations. One of the family life recommendations from the proceedings and conclusions immediately caught my attention. NACLAM indeed took a leap of faith and offered to train our leaders online. The recommendation stated to form pastoral leaders to provide pastoral care and accompaniment for particular needs and situations that affect families at all stages of family life. We offered Ministry with Families 101 in English in the fall of 2020, and then in Spanish in the winter of 2021, all on Zoom in 6 weeks with quarterly follow-up sessions for an entire year. To offer Ministerio con Familias 101, or Ministry with Families 101 in Spanish, it took a lot of time and effort on my part, and it took a lot of time and effort on Carlos's part too. Whenever I wanted to send out an email to participants, I had to wait for the presenters to send me their handouts and information in Spanish and the directions of what to do with it in English, so that I would know what would be expected. Of course, I always wanted to add more to my emails with local information, so that meant Carlos had to translate everything that I was going to send out. And then, at my request, I would always ask him to proof my work. I attended all 6 sessions of the training in Spanish, as well as the preparation meetings with leaders beforehand, and all the quarterly follow-up meetings. Since I had participated in the English training months before, and the manual was printed bilingually, I could follow along, but I didn't know the richness of the stories being shared by the presenters, nor the participants' reaction. Carlos and I would meet. He would tell me what was shared in the training, and I helped him to see how the concepts being taught and the experiences being shared connected with the material. We were working out of our strengths to move ourselves and those we serve to grow in ministry with a family perspective. A most helpful tool that NACLAM created came from the U.S. Bishop's resource, A Family Perspective in Church and Society. It's a chart outlining the stages of family growth. In folders, I believe only the English got in, right? We have the Spanish. You have the Spanish there too, okay. So make sure you grab the Spanish copy. This resource can be used by all ministries that impact families to encourage ministry with a family perspective. All families are developing systems and are diverse in their growth. This tool is not just for information, but to help the parish and its ministry leaders assess the needs of families at every stage and to offer ministry in response to those needs. It's not about offering more, but about connecting people with appropriate resources and partnering with other ministries and institutions. We are the church, and we cannot be church alone. The parts of the body are meant to function as a collaborative system. We are meant to labor with one another. We're designed to be gente puente, my new favorite saying. Bridge people or bridge builders, working together to meet the diverse needs of families so that health is restored to the body and all the gifts are needed to keep that blood flowing. So how do we keep the blood flowing and the body nourished? How do we celebrate diverse parts of the body and create a united system? The answers have been in this story. Got the last one? Okay, there we go. In case you needed some help picking out what were the practices that helped to create unity and diversity, you see it up there. Those are just some of them. Perhaps you thought of some others. So this is just one of our diocesan stories through the lens of family ministry, but it's for the entire church. Most of what you see up there, it doesn't matter what ministry you're working in. This is what we need to all do as church, just as the fifth encuentro was for the entire church. Thank you.
All of these will be shared to you, as I said, or with you at the end of the encuentro. And we have created a table that has different resources, like Diocesan Schools of Formation. Savannah has one. The Diocese of Lexington has one. These will all be shared with you after. So you know that there are many things happening. Break time is now. 10 minutes. Run. Okay, I need to give light to my phone and then I'll ask the question what time Bishop.
Wait.
How do you like it? To all the people that is connected. Just a few words like English and Spanish. Okay. Can you identify yourself, please?
My name is Norma Velas Garcia. I'm from here, from Diocese of San Agustin. I'm glad that you are connected and watching us because this is incredible. And I just want to say that thank you. Thank you, Seppi, for giving us the opportunity to share about our stories, best practices, and also to recognize the importance of the Hispanic ministry and the church, and to see the gifts and everything that the Hispanics can bring to the life of the church. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What's your name again? Norma. How are you doing?
Good, very happy.
Sister, you want to say something? How are you doing?
We're doing very well, especially we're almost done. We will, I think we're taking along. Yes, tomorrow we continue.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I work here at the Lady of La Leche, and I love all these people because they're absolutely joyful, grateful, and wonderful people. Thank you. God bless you.
And we have enjoyed very much all your hospitality and the love that you have welcomed us with.
Oh, you're very, very welcome.
Okay,
God
thank you.
bless you.
Bye bye.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They were like, I think that they asked me about that, but I had other stuff. I just scheduled visits in spring.
Janice and I played around with years ago.
Yes, I have that. But then the
The
next
initial
one,
investments
more.
we actually consider offering subsidies.
Yes, I looked at, I just looked at.
If they come to our original classes. Because the idea, it's kind of like what Chick-fil-A does, they started offering extra support to their employees. They found that improved the productivity because they're at the same sex. So the idea is that we can offer this sort of monetary incentive for life they have home and they're kind of pieces of their relationship. But that likes to.
In the past, I have never realized.
So they should be ready to go ahead and well, then, you know, single parents don't have access to subsidies because they don't have a marriage to. That's our concept. Be with this.
Well, I'm learning.
For their presentation. Well, it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be.
I'm gonna ask us to start getting on our place. We're just gonna have a few minutes of Q&A with Dr. Guzman Ospino before he goes back to Boston. And meanwhile, as you're sitting down, make sure that you don't leave without this. With her, we have everything. Without her, we have nothing. Right? Sin la Virgen, con la Virgen todo, sin ella nada. This would be a very beautiful Christmas gift. So please take them. We don't want to take them back because we have other boxes there. Very good, Padre. Muy bien. For your seminarians, those of you who are vocation directors, this is a nice gift for the seminarians. Huh? We're going to continue. So I ask those of you who are coming in to please find your places. And we're having this Q&A. And right after, we'll continue with vocations. So I think that we are ready to start. We're having wonderful conversations, a lot to think about and to do. And I hear someone saying, I'm not going to give you, I'm going to share. So we are going to continue, and the dynamic here is going to be, if we have any questions or any comments about what we've heard so far. We were supposed to do this at the end, but we're gonna move that because this is a living thing. It moves around. Living process, not thing, living process. So I'm going to be.
Gracias. Well, thank you, Olga. We spent this morning looking at these frameworks, these possibilities, this study on the organizations that are working well and so on. And so Olga has asked me to maybe spend some time with all of you, perhaps answering questions, but also listening to reactions and comments. How have you felt challenged, in your dioceses, in your ministry? Where do you see things going? And it would be great to listen or to hear different perspectives, I mean, the bishops, if you feel inclined, from your perspective as bishops, what do you see happening? How are you, are you from the level of the bishop's office responding? those of you who are doing youth ministry, for those of you who are doing evangelization, family ministry. So, and if you need some clarification vis-a-vis some of the data that I have shared with you, also happy to comment, but that doesn't mean that I have the answers, but I'll be happy to elaborate or clarify. Yes, sir.
Dr. Ospina. Oh, thank you. Okay, here's what I'm thinking that I'd like to get your take on. Most of our young ones are, and I'm talking teenagers and young adults, are probably not going to become nuns or priests. So it concerns me that we don't often enough pray for the vocation to holy matrimony. But also, when I was young, another state in life that was given respect was the single state. And even though they're not probably going to say stay single forever, I'm concerned that we don't seem to be letting them know, or actually any kind of formation about that as a blessed state in life for those in between years, because it seems to me the only options I think they have is not a priest, not a nun, just like, and some people are not ready for marriage, but they want to serve God. I mean, I'm a nun, so I don't really know that. But I've read some books and seen some movies. However, that concerns me because, and I don't know if you've ever done a research on that or.
Well, you are gonna love a book that the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate is going to release next week, as a matter of fact. And this is a book that was edited by Father Tom Gaunt, who is the president, or who's the executive director of CAD. Okay, in that essay is based on a study that CAD conducted a couple of years ago on young adults, and with a particular emphasis on how young adults are living their spiritual lives. I don't have the title of the book, but maybe you can Google. Mighty Google does many things, knows it all. If you can find it, and just Thomas Gaunt, and it's with Liturgical Press. You'll find it. You'll find the title, and then we can share it here. In that book, as a matter of fact, I have a chapter in that book, and so I'm doing some PR here as well. But that is exactly one of the questions, one of the points that we are highlighting. What are the attitudes of young adult Catholics today vis-a-vis marriage, vis-a-vis vocation? Because that's one of the questions that we are having. You're right. At least right now, the vast majority of young adult Catholics are not and will not consider and will not consider a calling to the priesthood religious life. But what's interesting is that in the study, in the study that's it, faith and spiritual life of young adult Catholics in a rising Hispanic church. And that's a fascinating book. They're not going to become priests or nuns, that they have not considered this possibility. And actually, the data that Caraspet says is that about a full third of young Catholics and young adult Catholics have at some point considered being a priest or being about religious. Where the challenge is? That institutionally, none of us follow that. So we don't have major structures of following up. We have the vocations offices and so on, but we do not have much. Now, remember that Catholic schools continue to be the one common denominator among most people who are going to Catholic seminaries and houses of religious formation. Okay, it is still the number one common denominator. They have received catechesis, they've been engaged in catechesis, and they have been to Catholic school or Catholic education either at elementary school level, high school level, or college level. which is another plug for Catholic education. We really need to do that, you know? Again, most Latinos is gonna be a challenge because only 2% of Latinos are going to Catholic schools. But most Catholics in the world, actually, most priests in the world have discerned their vocations not in Catholic schools. The two main sources of fostering vocations to priesthood, religious life throughout the world, in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, you know, and to a certain extent in Europe, historically, were family and youth ministry. Anything that you engage, anything that you do in youth ministry and families. I mean, and maybe we're returning to that. So for those of you who are doing this, you know, religious education, youth ministry, maybe we need to start connecting vocational ministry to those two dynamics. Now, but let me answer the actual question that you asked earlier, and that is in one of the chapters in that book. We are at a time in history, you know, for the first time in the history of the United States of America, more than half of the adult population, no, is not married, is not intended to be married, does not want to have children, and is not committed into a permanent relationship. That's about 53% of adults out there, okay? So we used to have, I mean, in the 1940s, 50s, the challenge for many Catholics was that women were having children out of wedlock, okay? Today, the challenge is that they don't even want to be in a relationship, they don't want to have children, and period. No, that's where we are. So I think that there is room for us to talk more about the vocation to single life, to service, vocation to service as single people. Pope John Paul II was big on this, you know, and he spoke, about honoring this vocation. I think that vocation somehow gets a little bit, talk about that vocation is hidden because of the urgency that we have these days for more priests and more religious, and more about religious. But I think that we have an area where we can capitalize a little bit more, and we're not doing it, no? But I think that the biggest concern to me is simply the impact of, most adults in this country simply not wanting to have a family, not wanting to have children, not wanting to live in committed relationship, And we're going the way of Japan very soon. One of the biggest problems in Japan is that people don't even want to have sex, And that's, I'm sorry to be so crass on this, but the thing is, no sex, no next generation, And that means aging of the population, major aging of the population has a huge impact on the population. So there's a lot that we need to do in that regard. So, absolutely.
There are Father Mike and Father David, and then deacons just have to be free.
Oh, good.
Dr. Ospina. Father Mike Tobin. And before I ask a question, I just wanted to offer a comment. Thank you for being everywhere at all times. In the past 3 years, I've heard you at a half dozen conferences, and you preach the gospel of Hispanic ministry. You're like a leader, a father of the community, and I just wanted to thank you. But can I be devil's advocate?
Absolutely.
If the best practice requires all diocesan offices to serve the entire community, what do those of us who are Vicar for Hispanic Ministry, Director of Hispanic Ministry do with diocesan leaders to actually get them to hire the personnel to embed in those offices? So it's a great model, and I'm sure it works in dioceses well, but without mentioning certain names, it's not always the case.
Yep.
So you really just have one person in one office, but they're not supposed to serve the entire community. They're just to be an advisor.
Yes. Well, thank you for that question. And you're absolutely right. You know, I'm going to give you an example of a diocese that actually I know did this very well, and they didn't do it overnight. And that was the Diocese of San Bernardino with Bishop Jerry Barnes when he was the bishop there. When Bishop Jerry Barnes inherited his diocese, you know, in a mostly Hispanic, it was a mostly Hispanic diocese, also with a large Asian population. Most of the people working at the chancery were white, Euro-American, monolingual. Some of them were bilingual, and people with huge hearts, and they wanted to work well for the community. But again, you know, when you need someone, when you need bilingual leaders with intercultural competencies, you know, goodness is not enough. You know, so you also need the skills. And what Bishop Barnes did was, little by little, he ensured that every position that opened in his diocese, and this took him almost 20 years. So this didn't happen overnight. So it took him almost 20 years. Every position that opened in his diocese was replaced with someone who would be bilingual and bicultural. Those two. Now, he of course had a bias towards hiring more Latinos because the majority of the population is Latinos. But one of the challenges he ran into was that there aren't that many Latinos available to work at that level in the diocese. There weren't that many. So he said, we need to start training those Latinos. Many of the Latinos who are being hired in his diocese today and in some dioceses in California and other parts of the country were Latinos that began with basic formation programs, and they were cultivated along the way. It takes almost 2 decades to cultivate someone who's going to be at the level, you know, of diocesan ministry and so on, you know. But he was very intentional, and I like that. I know that your archdiocese has also been intentional about Miami, has been intentional about hiring these leaders, and it takes a long time. It takes a long time, and there are some white leaders who are fully bilingual, fully bicultural. They are welcome. What happened with the likes of you, for instance? You know, the people who were hired to run Hispanic ministry or Black ministry and so on, in the Diocese of San Bernardino, and again, I highlight that example, that person became a liaison. That's the liaison. And what this person does is doesn't oversee one ministry. The bishop hired in that diocese, and her name is Petra. Petra, forget her last name. Petra Salazar. Petra Salazar is the liaison. When she started working for the diocese, she was the director of Hispanic ministry. Today, she's the liaison for diversity in the diocese. So her job is to literally ensure that hiring processes, new programming, new outreach, and every evangelization effort in the diocese connects with the different populations in the diocese. So far, they have been successful. Bishop Rojas inherited a successful model. I think it's a great case study to follow. So, thank you. Oh, Father.
Dr. Espino, thank you. Keeping in mind that many vocation directors and bishops right now are considering the lack of people responding to the vocational call for various reasons in regard to accepting people into formation who lack or are in the process of legalizing paperwork or do not have any legal paperwork in this country?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And okay, so keep in mind, first of all, let's go back to those numbers that we discussed earlier, okay? 94% of Latinos under 18 are US born, okay? So these people are citizens of this country, participants of this country, they are culturally integrated into this country, and on, okay? So the first thing, and before I end my preamble to answer your question, is shift as many resources as you can towards working with this US-born population, okay? The bishops of the United States began a process of inviting priests from Latin America to serve in the United States in the 1960s. And openly, the bishops, actually, there's a document out there that, in which they call this as a stopgap measure. We're going to invite these priests to come and serve the Latino community until we can cultivate our own clergy. That has been done with every group, with the Irish, with the Italians, with the Germans. It has been done with every group, But what's interesting is that with most other Catholic groups, by the second generation, actually third generation, was able to produce their own priests. With the Latino community, the process has been much slower. And so we need to invest more resources. So with that in mind, we got the largest pool of potential vocations for the priesthood religious life is the US-born population. Second and third generations. That's where the, if I could say, where the money is. That's where the energy is. That's where the energy is of these populations, and yet we don't invest as much as we should investing in them. These are people who already speak the language, already understand the culture. They can jump into leadership right away, and so on. Just to give you a sense, most of the priests, 85% of priests, Hispanic priests in the United States of America, are foreign-born. 85%. Linguistically, it takes about 10 to 15 years to master a language, to become fluent in a language. It takes almost 2 decades to understand the cultural nuances of an entire community, of a society, okay? So technically, when we continue to over-rely on foreign-born priests, and we're grateful to foreign-born priests, the thing is that we delay the process of these priests, from the process of assuming responsibilities in dioceses, where there's pastors, actually there are hundreds upon hundreds of Latinos, Hispanic priests, who have never made it to pastors, who are not pastors, largely because, one, they don't understand, they don't fully manage fluent in the language, and two, because they don't understand how a diocese in the United States works, as simple as, so it takes a long while. When we invest in the US-born population, then we already have these people who understand everything, and all they need is the appropriate technical training and pastoral training in order to do this. And I think that we're missing a great opportunity when we don't stop investing or do not invest in the second, third generation. But on the other hand, let me now argue against myself, the ones who are coming to church are not the second and third generation. The ones who are coming to church are the immigrants, okay? And most of the people who express an interest in leadership in leadership and so on happen to be on the immigrant generation. So you have to work with what you receive, with what you get, So many dioceses in the country choose not to engage potential candidates that are undocumented for many reasons, okay? One, if they are ordained, they could go into a seminary and literally, study for 6-7 years, The problem is that eventually they will not be able to operate as priests. What some religious orders are doing is they take the young person, the young adult who is undocumented, they take the person out of the country, Mexico, sometimes Spain, or other parts of the world. That person goes through training for 10 years, which is the penalty that the government imposes, upon someone who has violated migration laws. So for 10 years, that person gets formed somewhere else. They go through a master's degree and another master's degree and maybe a doctoral degree and whatever the community has. And then after those 10 years, then they regularize the process and bring them into the United States. That's a long time assuming that this person is not gonna leave the process, anytime within those 10 years, So, do you know, in your diocese, what do you do, Archbishop?
When I arrived as Archbishop of Miami, my predecessor had just ordained 3 men who were illegal aliens and had that 10-year bar to them. And he was thinking about farming them off to the Bahamas or another country for 10 years. But the guy that was in charge of citizenship services of the old INS, Emilio Gonzalez, under Bush administration, he was a parishioner of ours in Miami, and so he still knew some people in immigration. So he was able to get deferred departure for the 3 of them, which is sort of like a slow boat that never arrives in port. Basically, it's what the DACA kids have, deferred departure, and now it's been 12 years. One of them has got himself straightened out because of a mother that became a citizen, and he was able to, whatever. The other 2 are still in kind of that limbo state of deferred departure, which is every 2 years. Now, we have people that apply for the seminary, and they're not necessarily in illegal status yet. They traveled on tourist visas, and so when their tourist visa expires, they're still in the country legally, and so that offers you some opportunities. And a person on a student visa, on a tourist visa, that indicates he wants to become a seminarian for you and all that. And if you take them, then you can apply for a student visa for him. And a student visa will allow him to study. And then when he gets close to ordination, after diaconate, ordination of priest, then you flip that to a religious worker visa. And that religious worker visa is good for about 2 terms. You get it twice. After 2 terms, then you move on to green card. The only thing I would say about that is, 2 things I would say about that. Student visas, if you read the fine print closely, it says a non-immigrant visa. So I have a seminarian, second theologian, that this summer went to Haiti to renew his student visa. And he didn't have to go to Haiti to renew his student visa because he was here long enough to be eligible for TPS, temporary protected status. But temporary protected status is another limbo. And, a student visa could be changed into a religious worker visa, which could be changed into a, green card. So he went to Haiti to renew his student visa. Well, in Haiti right now, the situation is very chaotic. And so the American Council in Haiti thinks that anybody that's asking for a visa to travel to the United States is traveling with the intent to stay. So he refused it. So I have this guy stuck in Haiti that, we're going to try to appeal it again. We've already, but so that's one thing, so that there's still a precariousness. And, you don't want those seminarians to travel too often back to their homelands because that visa, you're at the mercy of any counselor, anybody at the, at the immigration. When they come back into the country, they can always be turned back. Discretion of these immigration authorities. So you have to be very careful. But the other problem of that is that if you have a student studying on a student visa, and it's hard to figure out how you help that man discern his vocation, because if you're thinking that maybe he shouldn't be a priest, there's he's a good guy, but he has some qualities that maybe this is not what God wants someone to do. Well, that guy, how can he make an honest discernment about whether he should be a priest or not, when deciding not to be a priest would mean getting your ass deported back to the country you came from? And so that is a particular challenge for formation people, for seminaries, very particular challenge. So it's not a felicitous thing. Now, we have priests in the United States that are DACAs, that have been ordained, they're DACAs. We have priests that are TPS, temporary protected status, whether Haitians or Salvadorians, and I think some Hondurans and Nicaraguans and Venezuela now. But so it's, and you know, it's all messed up because of the broken immigration system. So.
So let's wrap it up. You know, going back to your question, you know, should we invest in? I think that we have, you know, two dynamics on the one in here. On the one hand, there is the bureaucratic. There's the let's be realistic, you know, about what it takes, the problems, the investment, and so on. What I have heard from other bishops is that many of these undocumented candidates, you know, they do not have the bachelor's degree, so they want to invest in the bachelor's degree, but that requires that a small diocese, for instance, would have to invest in 10 years of academic formation, and eventually the person decides not to become a priest, you know, the diocese doesn't have a way to recover the investment. That's right. No, they don't have those resources. And again, it sounds cruel in many ways. I mean, to think about this in terms of finances and so on, but forming a seminarian could cost you easily $500,000, you know, and a diocese does not have the $500,000, for instance, for 2 or 3 or 5 of these people on a regular time. But from a faith perspective, let's also remember, and I think that your last point makes a lot of sense. We need to do some serious discernment. I mean, the community, the ecclesial community, does some serious discernment, and the young person needs to make discernment as well. If God is really calling this person, I think that we need to trust the way God is calling.
One group that is interesting in their discernment are the neo-catechumenate groups. The neo-catechumenate communities, every year, you know, they send young men that have discerned a vocation to San Giorgio in Italy, where Kiko accepts them into the seminary, puts their names in a hat, and then assigns them to different seminaries around the world. Now, the Neocats have about, I guess, maybe 60 to 80 seminaries now. They're basically house of formations that, you know, they are attached to, you know, diocesan seminaries. But those vocations come out of their communities. You know, and you know, about twice a year, these communities, they have these convivencias where they ask all the people, you know, what kind of missionary vocation are they discerning. So you have lay couples stand up and they say, we want to be missionaries, you know, we want to go to China, or we want to go to, you know, to Europe or someplace to preach the gospel. Then you have young people, some of them 10 years old, some of them 20 years old, saying, we want to be a priest. But the catechists that are in charge of these communities take note of them, and they follow them. And what's an interesting thing too is that, you know, they don't go to that meeting in Italy to be picked by Kiko without their catechist recommending them. And the catechists don't recommend them unless they show, you know, unless the community. And that's, you know, that's something that we lack in our own recruitment of seminarians. We pick, you know, our vocation directors work with these guys, and sometimes the guys that we get have had no experience with any parish, no experience with any Christian community, and nobody from a parish or a Christian community giving you any feedback about this guy. And then when they get him into the seminary, you know, you have to get him out pretty quick. So,
I'm sorry, but we have, thank you, Archbishop Wensky.
Olga,
But
you know,
we have
never ask a theologian and a bishop to keep it short.
we have Thank you so much, Dr. Ospino. We thank you, and as usually, as Father Mike expressed so well, we're very grateful for the gift you are for our church at this time in history. And more than, and the Father, he said, Father, I believe that you are a mentor and you have that vision to move forward. So thank you. Keep centering Christ. And I'm going to invite Bishop Paul Meyer, our host. Thank you for coming and being so patient, but he speaks Spanish too, so he understands our concept of time.
Well, I'm very nervous to speak in front of the bishops. So thank you. I'm glad to welcome you. I'm afraid I would have been here at the beginning, but this is one of those things that they said Bishop Estevez had on his calendar and said, will you celebrate Mass? And that's not all I knew about this gathering. So I'm just learning how great of an opportunity this is. And so I'm sorry that I'm not here now, but I will block off time the next time that we gather here so that I can be with you more. So I want to say thank you, but I was also asked to speak as you look at your schedule there on the topic of deacon formation in particular. So I'm speaking to you now, not so much as Bishop of St. Augustine. We ordained a new group of permanent deacons here in June before I got here. So we're now having a conversation about starting in that. But the reason I'm speaking to you about this is that I was a priest in Arkansas, and one of my responsibilities was the formation of permanent deacons. So I was the director of the permanent deacon program in Arkansas, and we ordained in June as well. So that was something that I was able to complete before moving from there to here. And so we ordained 47 permanent deacons in Arkansas in June, and including my brother. So that was a great experience because when I was ordained a bishop, my dad's a deacon, my brother's a deacon, and they held the book of the gospel over my head. So I have a great love for deacons. So I wanted to talk about that formation because what we've done in Arkansas is see one class all the way through and then kind of get the act together and see another class all the way through. But the first class in Arkansas was in 1982. So there have been a lot of deacons over the years. And the deacon class we ordained in June of this year was the second group that had a Spanish track along with an English track. So we have some experience of that. The previous group ordained 20 native Spanish speakers and about 20 English speakers. The group that we just ordained had 11 in the Spanish track and 1 in the English track who was native bilingual, and then the rest were English speaking. So we had to do it because of those numbers. We had to really separate both groups because we didn't have a space big enough to handle them all at the same time. And so we basically had 2 separate tracks. And I was asked to talk about that formation, but also the importance of it, why we need to work to be able to provide training in Spanish and not just for Spanish speakers who are also bilingual. And so I would say that my experience in Arkansas, the first reason that we should work to be able to provide that training in Spanish is because God's calling people to ministry who are not bilingual. So we have men who have been in their communities for a while and maybe speak enough English to do their job at work, but not much beyond that, and certainly not ready to be able to learn at the level that they would need for deacon formation. So the first reason is that desire to help discern what is God calling these men to. And so the way we started the program in Arkansas, and the next program in Arkansas is starting with now, is a discernment process. So we wrote a booklet of discernment to help sort out who is called to deacon ministry specifically, and who just feels called to deeper ministry in the church, and maybe in a way that isn't deacon ministry. So we did a discernment program that was 3 sections. The first section was how to discern. Just how does prayer look different when you're discerning a specific question? Then the second section was the social teaching of the church with a belief that many of these men who feel called into more in the church, they don't really know what their options are. They just see, well, there's deacons and I'm married, and so that must be the next thing. And so to help them discern that service in the church can take on different forms. And then after we helped them understand service in the church in general, then we had a deacon life specific. So what does it mean to be a deacon? What is the identity that comes with being a deacon? So that they could decide, is God really calling me to that ministry or to just a deeper commitment in the church in a different way? And throughout, we really emphasized strongly that not applying for the diaconate was in no way a failure, but instead the goal of all this discernment is, where is God leading you? And so then we ended up with the ones that we had. So that discernment was done regionally. The Diocese of Little Rock is the whole state of Arkansas, so it's spread out. So we had that discernment happening for 9 months in different parishes all around the diocese, primarily led by other deacons. And then that was happening in English and Spanish. And then they were able to apply if they chose. Then they would go through the screening process of application. And then we would go through the process of accepting or denying the applications and then beginning that formation. So we started, when we did the discernment, we had 130 men in discernment. I say men, it's couples. Everything was done all the way through with couples together, the discernment and all the formation. So we had 130 men that were in the discernment. We had around 80 of those men that then applied, and about 10 that we didn't accept, and then started with about 70, and then over attrition across 5 years, we had 47 that were ordained. So in the formation in English, we had a program that was set, and then we took the same syllabus, basically, and we followed that model in Spanish, and all of the Spanish was taught by priests in the diocese. So they would come in and teach the program, and we did work at the beginning to adapt whatever we needed to do academically for them. Many of the candidates did not have much education, but we realized quickly that the level of education was not the best gauge of what they were capable of, because we certainly had men capable who just never had an opportunity. But then there, of course, were others who couldn't do even basic levels of the academic work. So we started doing that at the beginning so that we could identify who's capable and provide them the opportunities, who's really not capable, and then because of discernment, we could move them into other ministry with the message that it's not failure if you're not serving this way, but it's about understanding where God is calling. And then we worked throughout that process to be able to help them identify the skills they were capable of. For example, the hardest skill academically is being able to write. And so we realized the deacons, they're not going to have to write papers. They're going to have to preach. And for preaching, all they have to do is be able to read their own writing. Nobody else has to be able to read it. So they don't have to turn in those papers. And so we shifted so that the work was done all orally, because there were times guys struggled to express themselves in written form, and then when we sat down to talk to them about it, it was clearly understood. And so we adapted so that they were able to speak what they were learning rather than having to write it. And so we made adjustments to what was expected academically, with, I believe, not sacrificing the formation that they needed, and a way to measure that they were actually learning what they needed to learn. So, for example, they had a Christology class, and they had true and false questions, and they had to explain why this was true or not. And so it was technical, and their ability to explain the technicalities of these basic teachings of Jesus showed us that they were learning what they needed to learn. So I will turn it over, I believe, you next to speak about the deacon formation in the Diocese of Biloxi. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, and I'm sorry.
And Bishop Kinnaman and Deacon Mike, they're going to do a duet.
Just a special float autograph parade.
Exactly. So we have really seen the need within the diocese, one, to make disciples, and that's across the board, but two, to also begin to train leadership within the diocese. And one of the areas that we felt really strongly is that within the Hispanic community, we felt there were a number of men being called to the diaconate. And we didn't have a way for them to work into the program because it was in English completely. And most of the ones that we were seeking were mainly Spanish speaking. And so it led us into a discussion with SEPI. And so, Olga, thank you very much for your work with us. We appreciate you very much, and the whole SEPI team. So whatever we have up here,
Who's that?
I don't think he's afraid of talking in front of bishops. Keep going. I love it.
Technology.
So we started to work on an integrated Hispanic and English, Spanish and English program together. And the discussion actually was taking place with not just us as the Diocese of Biloxi. So we'll go to the next slide real quick. There you go.
There.
Play button. Play button's at the top left.
Wait.
So these are some of the folks as it's flashing by. All right. And very, very grateful to each
Play at the top.
for their help to begin this process. And give me 1 second. I was the director of religious education for the Diocese of Corpus Christi one time for a bunch of years, and gave a talk on how not to use audio visuals.
That's a new one.
And this is exactly what happened to us as we were given the book. It's a perfect example of how not to use audio. Anyway, we're good. We have accelerated. And that finishes our conversation. So we're very grateful to Deacon Ronnie and Father Raphael and Deacon Charles and then Bishop Baker. But these are the dioceses that we were starting with the discussion. And most helpful to be able to walk together with these dioceses to try to set up a program that will enable our Hispanic ministry folk, Spanish speaking especially, to be able to be a part of the permanent diaconate program. Okay, keep going. So Deacon, if you will.
Okay, so the big thing was.
With microphone right here.
The big thing was to make an easier target for SEPI to help our region. And so we first wanted to have a common curriculum. Each diocese does their deacon formation differently. A city is different than a rural diocese. Some meet on a whole weekend, some meet just on Saturdays, multiple Saturdays during a month. And so we set up the curriculum so we have what we do in the aspirancy year and through the years of candidacy. So everything from spiritual formation to the academics of theology, scripture, philosophy, all the way down to homiletics. And all the dioceses agreed on this curriculum. If you hit the button again. And Charles Ike was the one that helped do this and coordinated it between the dioceses. He was from the Diocese of Mobile, Archdiocese of Mobile. Okay? All right, and one more click. SEPI got involved with this. One back. There you go. One more. There. One more. Don't touch. Okay. So after that meeting, we started having monthly meetings with SEPI. And SEPI sort of culturally indoctrinated the rest of us so we would understand the Spanish culture and how to act. Dr. Espinos spoke to us in January of 2020, seeking understanding of culture and how it works. Father Rafael Capo spoke to us on intercultural communications. And all of these speeches were really good, excellent presenters and doctors and stuff giving these from CEPI. One thing that was stressed in all of them was the integration rather than assimilation. And we spoke to one of our deacons who is Hispanic. We only have 2 really Hispanic deacons. And he said, I thought we were supposed to be assimilated, act like the Americans said. No. I said, you're supposed to, reflect your culture. You're supposed to take the good things out of the Spanish culture, the good things out of American culture, and make a better unity because of that. And so we really stress this with all, and the Hispanic deacon is part of the formation team. Okay. And also with that formation team, you can find this also out on the library table there to buy. Building Intercultural Competence for Ministers Bilingual. And each month that we met with the deacon formation team, one of us took one of these chapters and explained it and taught it and opened it up to the other ministers, formation guys that were there, to help them understand the differences in culture and the beauty of culture and the need to integrate and not assimilate, okay? And there's been explosive growth in the Hispanic community, and the diocese is currently, we're in our 2nd year of formation with this class, 1st year of academics, 3rd month. And so one more slide.
Yeah. So the community from the year 2000 to the year 2020 in the Diocese of Biloxi has tripled. It's amazing, amazing. And therefore the need has tripled. And what we have right now, and keep going. So this is the class that we have now. So this is 15 men and their wives. And I actually happen to appear there too. So what we did was we really worked hard to call the men into the diaconate program through both discernment. So prior to the aspirancy year, we worked with them to get them to a point where academically they had a shot at it, so that they got equivalency of a GED at least, because even in the studies we have on Zoom, it's a challenge for them. It's a challenge, and we didn't want to set them up for failure. And then we have some that we're working on for the next class right now, because they weren't ready for this class yet, because some of their education was down to the 3rd grade level, 6th grade level, 9th grade level, and to just bring them up to a point where they had a chance to make it through, and also discern at the same time with their wives. And the gift of the community of deacons has been they have rallied around them to have mentored them, especially our 2 guys that are fluent in Spanish. They've been tremendous with this. And this opens up for us in the diocese a tremendous ability to reach out to more of our Spanish-speaking communities than we presently are right now. And what we had shown here is, Deacon, you want to hit this real quick?
Sure. So we went from this common curriculum for all the dioceses to a specific syllabus for us. This happens to be the syllabus for this fall. And the big deal is not silos of Spanish formation and silo of English formation, but a joint formation and integrated formation. So the class is together for all things except their instruction. And wherever there's the orange underline, we go to separate rooms for our instruction. The biggest challenge, which is working well now, is liturgy of the hours in English and Spanish, which real positive out of that was it makes the English and the Spanish get together and coordinate before they do liturgy of the hours, so it makes sense as they present it. So there'll be a psalm in English and with the antiphons, and then one in Spanish, then English, and the reading would be then in Spanish. And then whoever was leading that would do a little reflection on the reading, and goes like that. So coordinating that, it sounds easy to explain, to coordinate that with the Spanish liturgy of the hours and the English liturgy of the hours
it takes an effort, but it causes them to get much closer to go through that exercise.
So integrating together the two groups, so they're one group. And so their pastoral learning is together. And we really wanted them not to be walking in silos, but be walking with each other to support one another.
And as the bishop said, live is best, Zoom works, but it's a lot more effort. Okay, next. Okay, how instruction was given, just quickly. English classes are mostly in person with the same instruction that's been used for previous classes with some Zoom. And it's the opposite with Spanish, mostly Zoom with some in-person classes. Spanish, English are taught in their separate rooms. Prayer, mass, breakfast, lunch, dinner are all integrated. And when we do things together, you have to pause and make sure that things are also explained in Spanish. One humorous event was we went around and had each individual explain their background, how they felt a calling to the diaconate. And so I was leading it, and then the individual who was given his background, Hispanic, one of our Hispanic deacons was listening to him. It's his turn to interpret. And so keeps going on and on and on. Jesus is really interested into his discussion. It keeps going on. Finally, I interrupted and said, "Jesus, what is he saying?" And Jesus started repeating everything in Spanish. So I said, no, we need English. So anyway, but you have to take extra time when you have it together because you have to do it in both languages.
So one of the things that we found that's been helpful to us is we didn't have the resources of people that spoke Spanish that had the philosophy and theology background to be able to work with this group. With SEPI, we do, and a big hand for SEPI.
Stealing the words from my bishop, we could not have done it without SEPI.
Wonderful. And these are some of the additional challenges and successes we've had. You could talk to us afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I know it's been a full day.
This is the minefield we went through, and if we can save anybody making the same mistakes we made, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. Okay. God bless you.
We have 3 best practices, so hold on tight and we'll go. Vocations, we are going to ask Father Victor Ingalls from the Archdiocese of Mobile to come forward and share a best practice from the Archdiocese of Mobile.
I get nervous when he talks.
This is where Archbishop Brody gets real nervous. But this is my 7th year being vocation director, and all that time I've lived with Archbishop Brody and our Vicar General. So I, for one, am not nervous in front of bishops anymore. I've been vaccinated. It's been a good situation. It's been a wonderful collaboration. Okay, so in 2016, I was minding my own business and as a parochial vicar in my parish, and unbeknownst to me, Archbishop Olga Villar was the director of Hispanic Ministry in our diocese, and Archbishop had invited / challenged / insinuated that we should have a discernment retreat in Spanish. And so Olga, as she does with all things, kind of took the ball and ran with it. The vocation director at the time did not speak Spanish, and so he was kind of concerned, but Olga said, "But I do, and I also know this other priest who knows some Spanish." So they called me, and we sat together and kind of planned our first ever vocation retreat in Spanish. And the first question we had to say is, what are we going to call this? We kind of went back and forth, but we're like, we don't want to scare guys away. So I remember Olga saying, like, we should just pick something generic and kind of like masculine. So we came up with Hombre por Cristo. And part of the reason we did that, and we would kind of learn this more, is that because of everything Dr. Espino had said, a lot of Hispanic guys are intimidated by the idea of priesthood or vocation. And more than them, their families are very intimidated because they're counting on their son providing for their family, and they want grandkids, and they don't want him to be a priest, and so they're not like super excited about their kid necessarily going to like a sermon retreat. So we landed on Hombre por Cristo, and we also in future years we just call it a men's retreat. We don't even put the word vocation or discernment. We find that it is kind of scare guys away from the outset. So you kind of have to come in soft is what we found. So we had our first retreat, and we also decided not just to focus on priesthood, but on all the vocations. So already like what Dr. Espina was saying, from our very first retreat, we had married couples come in and present on marriage. Deacon Hector, who's our current Hispanic Ministry Director, he and his wife have been involved with this. We have priests come and talk about diocesan priesthood. We've been blessed to have Trinitarians in our diocese, and we've had different Trinitarian priests and some Jesuits come in and talk about religious life. And we also, I like the idea that the single life was brought up by Sister, also stressed the consecrated single life and different single vocations. So we try to kind of paint the whole picture. So we start our retreat with a way of the cross, and we kind of just point guys to look at Jesus Christ, and like, if you want to know what an hombre por Cristo is, look at Jesus Christ. He sacrifices everything for love. And so it's kind of our theme. It's like God is going to call all of you to sacrifice your life for love in one way or another. It's just a matter of how. And so then we have different people come and present what that looks like. So that was our first retreat. We had 12 people, including me and the current vocation director. We thought that was providential, apostolic. This is our second year. We got t-shirts, really upped our game a little bit. Real big right here. The guys love the big bold letter, like, hombre por Cristo. And so then we go to the third year, and this is where it really got ramped up because there was some debate, like, should we call this hombre por Cristo or para Cristo? And we're like, why not both? And then also, like, we needed like a good grita that we could like yell during the retreat. So during the retreats, become a hallmark of our retreat. Anytime somebody says hombre por Cristo, everyone has to yell back, y para Cristo. So let's try that. Hombre por Cristo! Y para Cristo! Mujeres por Cristo! Y para Cristo! So we yell that thousands of times all weekend. Everybody loves it. And this, can we go back to that one? This was exciting. We had our first two Hispanic seminarians, Blas and Andy. They're born in the United States. And also it's the first time that we invited our seminarians to come on the retreat. And this is Alex Crow, Zach Halloran. There's a couple more guys hiding in there. But that was a really cool experience to have our seminarians. And that made a huge difference. Them relating to guys on the retreat, people around their age, and that really took things. So that goes to our next year. And at this point, there was one guy named Javier who came out for the second time. We have seminarians again. At this point, we're full-blown hombre por Cristo. So that's really solidified. And we have seminarians. And there's a guy who came back. There's another campus named Ruben. There's two guys in this retreat who would become seminarians. So if we go to the next one. This was cool. One of our seminarians, he really took an interest in learning Spanish. We have immersion with our seminarians, but he was on several of the Hombre por Cristo. This was really special because he had just been ordained a priest. And so he came on Hombre por Cristo as a priest, and a lot of the guys remembered him as a seminarian. And he preached and was part of it. So that was really neat. And Javier, at this point, he's from Honduras. He had become a seminarian and it discerned out. But Ruben Castañeda, who's currently one of our seminarians, is a seminarian in this picture. And he is from my home country, Guatemala! So God has a wonderful sense of humor and providence. But this retreat, we've kind of been evolving in our name. But Father Alex Crow, I invited him to preach, and he gave this beautiful homily about our Blessed Mother, and he added a third step. And he was saying, no solamente somos hombres por Cristo, pero somos hombres de María. So we're gonna have to get bigger shirts because now we are hombre por Cristo y para Cristo y de. And so this is what we yell now. We go, I'll lead you in it. We go, hombre por Cristo y de, y de, y de. And it's like escalates each time. It's so fun. Everyone loves yelling it. This is at our new retreat center that Archbishop Brody had the vision for. It was built. It's really beautiful. It's on the water. And then to our next one, you see we kind of shrunk. It might have been too much chanting. I don't know. But what happened here was we had a huge age range. I mean, it was like kids from like 13 to like 35, and some dudes were like 50 were showing up. We said we got to kind of focus in a little bit. So we say you got to be 16 to 25. And this year we did a good job of, we got a contact person at each parish. We sat with Hispanic ministry. We said, who in each parish that has Hispanic ministry is connected to the most number of faithful young guys? Let's invite them to come to like a training, talk about what we want to accomplish at our retreat, and then equip them to have follow-up meetings afterwards. So we did that this year. It went really well. And we had, so Ruben Castañeda, mi paisano de Guatemala, you can see he's here, he's in his third year seminary. And then we had 1, 2, 3, we had 4 other muy gringo seminarians like myself who had just started seminary. But I asked them to come because I wanted from the very beginning them to have this experience. And as they start studying Spanish, they're going to be much more motivated because they spent an entire weekend listening to tons of talks, yelling, the whole thing in Spanish. But the other thing as we talked was they had some really profound conversations with a lot of the guys because they can speak English. Some guys couldn't, but the majority could. So that was really good, but it also helped them to kind of brace themselves. I think they're going to be more motivated to study Spanish to take advantage of their immersion programs. So that's pretty much it. But I would say too, one of the fruits of Hombres por Cristo, Madre de la Leche, todos los Marías. We might need to add de la Leche this year. I don't know, maybe put that image. But one of the cool fruits that I didn't expect was Hombre por Cristo became a template for, I'll say this, the very first meeting I had with Archbishop Brody as vocation director, he pointed to our vocation director, or to our vocation poster. He said, what do you notice about this poster? I was like, I don't know, a bunch of weirdos. Just kidding, they're great guys. I was like, no, seriously, like what? I was like, oh, there's a bunch of white guys like me. He's like, exactly. He goes, I would love for there to be some more color on this poster. And he challenged me. The very first thing he did, he challenged me. He said, I want you to, we're thankful for any vocation we get, but I really want you to try and labor in the vineyard for Hispanic and African-American vocations. And he said, I'll be praying for you every day. Good luck. So this retreat, one of the fruits is we started a retreat based on this template for our African-American young men called Enigma. And it's kind of double meaning. Enigma, something mysterious, hard to understand. If you are a young, black, Catholic male in the Deep South, you're an enigma to most people you know. And so just getting them together has been very fruitful. And then also it's an acronym for even now, I give myself away. Even now, I give myself away. So all the things that you face as a black young man, all those, we're saying, look, even now, Jesus Christ has plans for you and is calling you to give yourself away. We have not yet gotten a black seminarian, but I'm faithful, I'm hopeful that as we continue to sow there, I've met so many wonderful young men through the Enigma ministry. The Lord will provide. So that's been a fruit. And then even in the rest of mine, I have the groups called Rooted, which is kind of for anybody who wants to come. It's mainly white guys, but it's the same approach. I don't do discernment groups just for priests anymore. I do all these different things, just getting young men together of faith, challenging to think about how's God calling you to lay down your life? And I find it tends to sort itself out a little bit more. And if guys want to visit the seminary, I can do it from there. So it's probably too much, but thank you for the chance to share. And thank you to Olga for getting it started in our diocese. We're trying to.
Hombres por Cristo. We're going to continue with Pastoral Juvenil. We had a little bit of arroz con mango, but we are getting this through the parade, the Mardi Gras parade. Yes? Pastoral Juvenil. And we have a video from Brittany. She's also from the Diocese of Knoxville.
Hi everyone, greetings from the Diocese of Knoxville. My name is Brittany Garcia and I'm the Director for the Office of Youth, Young Adult, and Pastoral Juvenil Ministry here in the Diocese. I hear that you're going to be talking today about Pastoral Juvenil Ministry, the beautiful and important work that it is. So I just wanted to take a moment and just stress the validity of this ministry. Before I was director for the office, I actually served as the coordinator of Pastoral Juvenil Hispana for 5 years in the diocese. And in that 5 years, I learned a great deal about the reality of the Hispanic young community, about the different struggles that they face, about unity and diversity and what that really means for the church, and really the importance and the necessity for this Pastoral Juvenil ministry to exist. I will say that it is quite distinct and unique from that of youth and young adult ministry, mainly given that the pastoral needs for the Hispanic youth and adult community tend to be varying and different from the community at large. And so some of those factors include traditional family roles, some of the fears that they face and internalize that are unique to that community, some of the ideals on leadership, the methodologies in the ministry, and how that's played out practically. And so anyway, I just firmly believe in the importance of Pastoral Juvenil ministry existing for those that do strongly identify with cultures of their family's origin, or who prefer to pray in the Spanish language, who identify more strongly with that cultures and community and languages that are often found within the Hispanic Latino community. Often Hispanic young people mention that they feel too Anglo for the Hispanic community or too Hispanic for the Anglo community. And it just speaks to that reality that they often feel that tension of having one foot in both cultures or one foot in both languages. And Pastoral Juvenil ministry is a place where that reality is understood, and it's a space that seeks to meet them where they're at in that struggle or in that tension, in that place of understanding oneself within the United States culture. We offer a variety of ministries for youth and young adults in the hopes to engage the maximum number of young people with the gospel, because although there is only one gospel, it must penetrate the deepest roots of every culture. So wish you the best. God bless. Dios te bendiga. Nos vemos.
So Brittany is a model of youth ministry. We have others that include Pastoral Juvenil. She was the previous Pastoral Juvenil coordinator. She's now the director of youth ministry for the Diocese of Knoxville. And we're going to present now someone also very special to us, Norma, who is here from home diocese, San Augustine. And she's going to share a different model. She works in the Office of Youth Ministry, and her boss is right there. They work together. So youth ministry with having someone be working under the Office of Youth Ministry.
Thank you, Olga. Hola. So it's for me a pleasure to share, this reality of this modality of Pastoral Juvenil. Whenever Brittany was saying, she inspired me. She's amazing. I personally know her really well. And it's, in 2 minutes, she describes the importance of Pastoral Juvenil. And it was like, for me, like, ah! So what I want to bring to you is one of the best practices being under the Office of the Youth and Young Adult Ministry in diocese. For me, to be part of this office is an opportunity rather than see this as obstacle, because because people think that when you are on the youth ministry, you don't act direct ministry on the Hispanic, because you are, in an office of the youth ministry, but it's not. What I see is like this, it's an opportunity. We have a vision and a mission that in our ministry, that is aligned, that Pastoral Community includes a comprehensive ministry. Of course, we are being talking about the cultural and social reality and our Hispanic youth and young adult ministry. This decision, and I just want to be brief, how this, the opportunity to be under the office of the youth ministry. In 2015, Alba Orozco, and everybody knows her, she introduced me with the director of the Youth and Young Adult Ministry in diocese, trying to make a transition. They had the idea to see, how this works. And I think it was a wise decision. And it was a great help for the pastoral community, definitely, 100%. And the reason is because I had another director, and a year after, to be building, making that position of pastoral community in my diocese, they changed the director and Robin came. When Robin came into the diocese, we had the dialogue, and she was very open to know about their reality, what that was the fact that especially the Hispanic family was facing. And she led me the opportunity to include in my position, because my title is Multicultural Coordinator of Youth and Young Adult Ministry. So she allowed me the opportunity to add Pastoral Juvenil when she realized that the term of Hispanic ministry in Espanol, we have to say Pastoral Juvenil. It's no translation, and it's one of the results of the first national encounter of Pastoral Juvenil in 2006. So it was like instead to see that as an obstacle, she saw that an opportunity. Because when the people is reaching out in someone that has the last name was Garcia or Vélez Garcia, and Pastoral Juvenil Hispana, for them was like, hey, we have a space there. We belong to that office. So the next slide. Thank you, guys. So we promote integration, right, and assimilation, and something that we are talking during this day based on the USCCB building intercultural competences, and I really, 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 really invite you to read, because this material describes the natural stages of integration. It just takes time, and we should focus on what needs that happen in the stage, and and don't jump to the next stage until you really, really feel that you're ready to do it. Because sometimes, we're gonna read the book and we're gonna do it. No, it's stages, and it's gonna be little, sometimes takes years for some dioceses, but eventually they can just go to the goal to be integrated. By being under the office, we have an inclusive strategic plan, which includes activities, formation, and events that foster integration. Something that I really appreciate of Robin is that she's always present, even an hour, 2 hours, in all the events that we have in Pastoral Community. We have the retreats, we have a Pastoral Community workshop, we have Teología y Tacos, whatever we have, she's always present. And that's very important. By the way, we have the privilege to have the retreat Experiencia Cristo since 1999 in this diocese. So we have in the retreat 39, that is something that we offer for youth and for young adults, and really change their lives. Okay. We have since what is it, Lois? What is the word called? Participation. Sorry. Something that I really think that is important is the participation, right? How we can collaborate. And my participation in the monthly youth minister meetings is an opportunity to have leaders to recognize the pastoral needs to reach out in the Hispanic youth. That relation that we are building with all youth ministers. Even that if they have or they don't have, I know they have or they think that they don't have Hispanic in their parishes, to build that relation, to make them aware that they have Hispanic and that they need to reach out is important. So I had a really close relationship with them since now adding to my position of multicultural and pastoral juvenil and also running assistant because COVID-19 affected us. In the office we lost one of the positions and we don't have enough budget and Robin and I are running both offices with all the passion and fire and effort and taking, putting all our time and our talents to reach out to the young people. We also, as a participation with the youth minister, we have a training for youth ministry. That is another best practice. And we come to the youth ministers, especially if they are new, and we explain them not only about youth ministry, but also we bring all the conclusion of the fifth encuentro, and we invite them to reach out to the Hispanics, saying it's no way because we say it's because here's the conclusion, here's the fifth encuentro, and this is, the way that we need to reach out in Hispanic. The next one, Gaby. Thank you. During the event, we are open and flexible to create opportunities where Hispanic can be heard. This is another successful practice in this modality. And this is something that I really want to say. For example, we have conference, workshop in Spanish, areas, moments. For example, we have the Diocesan Youth Conference. Usually, in the past, that conference was like very wide. Yeah, to be honest, yes, they were, But now, since 2 or 3 years ago, we're bringing more and more Hispanic, and where we offer is a space. If they want to go to the same workshop, we have bilingual speakers. They have the opportunity to go to the English or to the Spanish workshop. And believe it or not, even though they speak English as a first language, for the last 3 or 4 years, I have a full room, and not only me, and other presenters or other speakers in Spanish. Even though they ask questions in English, they want to hear from us. And it's not because about the language, it's because about I feel comfortable with this person. This person is related to me because the culture, because she understands more than others what I'm living in my house, what I'm doing, or what I'm dealing in my school. It's another kind of relation that they really needs to face, and we need to. Okay, not just one thing, just one thing. I just want to say that Pastoral Juvenil in my diocese has their own logo, and the young people create, and I think it's really great that they feel that belonging. And we used to plan with them, for them. We have a core team, and it's incredible to see, how many times they ask for the people. Can somebody, for example, can somebody for the family that can come, or can somebody for information, or somebody for another offices. They feel that they really belong, but the most important is that they feel that they fit in the church, and it's something that we really want to make feel that belonging and that welcoming. So I think that's it. Pretty simple.
We have now, thank you so much, Norma, a different model, and that would be from the Diocese of Birmingham. The Archdiocese of Miami prepared her to go to bed, to go to Birmingham. Cristel Castillo. She's been in this position for a year and a half, and she's going to be sharing with us different models. But whatever we're doing or not doing, please let's do. The point is, we need to reach out and connect to young Latinos. So we're listening to different experiences.
Okay. So yes, this is like a different model. And so what it's looked like to have the Pastoral Juvenil Hispana under the Hispanic Ministry Office. And as Olga was saying, I arrived in the Diocese of Birmingham last year, and we didn't have like Hispanic young adult groups. And actually, the diocese have 78 parishes, 72, and we have a Hispanic ministry in almost 30 parishes. And from that 30 parishes, now we have 8 Hispanic young adult groups. So praise to God. And so the Pastoral Juvenil under the Hispanic ministry, we have our own events, our own formation, but we try with Maria Jose, like to have like events in which we can like work together. And one of the events that we organized this year was like it's like an encounter, like it's like a retreat with youth and young adults. And while the kids were taking the retreat, we are giving information with their parents. So so we have like both information. And another best practice that we're going to do this month is going to be like a theology of the body retreat for young adults. But before that, we are going to have like 3 nights in 3 different parishes, giving information to the parents with a psychologist that work with CEPI, with is Claudia Bermeo. So we are working, you see, like it's like, we have our own like activity, but we try to work too with the family. And the last one is going to be like a marriage retreat. And simultaneously, we are going to have like a mini retreat for the kids and for the youth. So we have in the diocese, I've been preparing like a missionary team, so we can like offer this formation for the youth and for the kids, while the parents are like taking their formation. So that's our like 3 best practices that we're working on. Are very effective, honestly. And now another best practice that I can share is that we are taking formation with the Steubenville Franciscan University. So we have a small group, and this like a small team of missionaries are taking the Pastoral Juvenil Hispana formation, and with CEPI too. We send the guy like every summer to Miami so they can take the formation. So you can have like a strong leader forming youth, forming kids, and like collaborate with the family too. So I don't know if Maria Jose wants to add something.
I just want to say I'm Maria Jose. I serve as the Director of Hispanic Ministry for the Diocese of Birmingham, and I worked in the Archdiocese of New Orleans for 20 years prior to that. But I just want to say I started as Director of Hispanic Ministry after I attended the National Quinto Encuentro. And all of us that were there, the main message was, what are we going to do for our youth and our Hispanic youth? I had just started. So I went back to my diocese and I started asking, what are we doing? And the Office of Youth Ministry back then was really dead. They weren't doing anything for anyone. Because I tried to speak to the gentleman that was running that office, and I'm like pumped up. This is what we're gonna do. And he's looking at me like, whoa. So I went to God and I said, okay, Lord, what am I gonna do with this? And I said, I know, we are gonna hire someone to work with me. Because I figured back then, I did Hispanic Youth Group. I am a fruit from Pastoral Juvenil. That's when I had my personal encounter, yes. So I knew what that meant for me when I was 16, 17, 18. here I am at an early age of 54 now. But I was 50 when I was called to be a director, and I said, I can't be doing camp outs and running. And I also had other ministerial areas. What I'm saying is, I knew what I had to do. And this is what I want to say, and I'm not scared to talk to bishops. I love you, and back then, Bishop Baker was my bishop. And I said, Bishop, I need to talk to you. I said, God has put in my heart that we need to hire a full-time, not part-time, full-time Hispanic ministry youth coordinator. And he went like, whoa, no, but we don't have money. Go talk to our CFO. And I said, but Bishop, I said, this is what I need you to please. And he's like, put it in writing. So he saw it and he said, okay, we'll go talk to the CFO. I went to talk to the CFO. And I said, Bishop told me to come talk to you. It's like, Maria Jose, we don't have money. And it's so hard when somebody tells you we don't have money, right? And I'm like, but we need this. And you know what I told them? I said, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. I said, there was a boy on an airplane, and there was a lot of turbulence. And everybody was so scared in that airplane. And this little boy was just, coloring, and he wasn't worried. And so the lady that was sitting next to him said, are you not afraid? There's turbulence. And he looked up and he said, no. And she's like, why? Because my daddy is the pilot. And I said, I'm telling you, I'm coming to you. I said, because my father and your father, I said, own this diocese and everything here. And I said, if he has put it in my heart, I said, what am I going to say? Our CFO said, no, Daddy. I said, that's going to be up to you. I said, I'm going to rest in peace knowing that I've done everything that I wanted to do because my father and your father, I said, they're the ones that handle the money. I said, it's his money. And we have to administer it in the right way. I said, and what am I going to say? Well, when I was director of Hispanic Ministry, we really didn't do much for our youth because we didn't have money. I said, no. What I'm going to say is, we didn't do it because our CFO said we didn't have money. And he was like, okay, Maria Jose, how much money do you need? Can you put up put the job description or whatever? And let me tell you, getting Cristel to our diocese, I knew Father Capó was the one that recommended her. I didn't know her, but knew that had worked and had helped in Miami. And I knew in my heart, and then COVID came, and after that position was approved, I had the money in my budget. And but wait, don't have yet. COVID comes and my CFO says, there's a hiring freeze. She can't come yet. And I'm like, what? But the money's in my budget. So what I'm saying is it took a lot of prayer, but it took courage. It took courage to really believe what God has put in your heart. People will always say no. But when God is telling you this is what you want you to do, you got to do it. So later, Cristel came. She's been with us for 1.5 years. We now have 7 active youth programs. Why is it a best practice to be under the same umbrella? Because we work together as a team. And we're evangelizing the whole family. We think of a marriage retreat. And then, so you know what? My Pastoral Juvenil team, I'm focusing on the marriage retreat. They're going to be doing a mini retreat to their kids. It's not childcare. We're evangelizing. They did their thing. We took care of the parents. We're working together, right? And we have one more mission. Now we're grateful that the diocese hired a full-time youth minister who happens to be with us today, our new director, Carol Wiggett, and now we work together with them. So yes, it takes courage and working together. The mission is the same, the focus is the same, and God is the one that leads us. Thank you.
So again, I think it's just a way to stress, like it's not enough, and I'm not nervous anymore, that we need to respond. And each one knows their own reality, their own diocese, and how their diocese work, you know best. But whatever you're doing, please keep this in mind. One more person that is Gabby, that will share a little bit of what's happening.
Thank you so much. I'm the one that was messing with the presentations before. Sorry. I work in the Pastoral Juvenil at CEPI with Juan Jose. Juan Jose had to go to the other part of the encuentro. So I just wanted to really briefly talk to you about Pastoral Juvenil at CEPI. What we want, as Olga mentioned at some point this afternoon, we have 3 pillars: formation, evangelization, and communion. So all of our programs want to focus on those 3 pillars. But why we're here? I'm here since I'm gonna turn 1 year in 2 weeks. Working in this position. I used to be a teacher. I used to work as a coach to professional development for teachers in, I'm scared because of you, I'm sorry. No, I used to be a coach for teachers in a non-profit organization. But as Maria Jose was telling, Pastoral Juvenil changed my life too. And matter of fact, Crystal was the coordinator of Pastoral Juvenil de Miami when I was a young leader there, starting with a youth group there, and she helped me to find my voice too. So that's what I'm gonna do here. We are trying with Juan Jose to work in different programs that wants to give that voice to the young adults. So what we do here, we want to help you in your different communities to give activities, programs, and trainings for these young adults to be trainers. We are right now, and I'm gonna ask for your prayers because we are right now revising all of our programs because we want to get an approach that train the trainer. So we want to help them. It's not like CEPI comes and fix things because we cannot do that. But we want to empower them to be able to repeat the process in their own communities. So we have 3, these are 3 of our programs, and I'm just gonna talk about this one that I'm really excited about. This is the Pascua Juvenil. It's the book of the Easter book that every time we talk about. But this year, we had the opportunity to stop and see what we want to do different this year. Let's hear them. Let's see what they need. And right now, we're gonna have a book that it's gonna be digital and also it's gonna be printed. But it's gonna have a dimension that it's personal, that it's just for that young adult, that it's walking through the Lent process, preparing his heart to the Triduum Pascual, to Easter. So what we want is to accompany those young adults to be able to live that. So that process, we have there some of our young adults that have been working on that, and they are the ones that are writing the book. This year, we also have the opportunity to give the book away in January instead of a week after the Lent, after we start Lent. So right now, what we want is to help you to do this with your young adults. So what we are trying to reinforce here is that please help us to help you. We want to revise our activities, revise our programs, see all the things that we are doing right, and see all the things that we can reinforce. So we have more programs. I don't have a lot of time, but I just want you to please be open and be also like check your email when we say something about trying to connect with different groups. So thank you so much. You will be hearing from us from the new programs, and thank you again.
Thank you, Gabi. Dr. Dora Tobar is the one that has been writing and material for formation for families, family life ministry. So Loyola Press is the one that brought her to us, and I just wanted to introduce her. She's going to be leading the Spanish part of but she's the family life ministry director for the Diocese of Lafayette, Indiana.
Hispanic ministry too, yes. Thank you. Yes, I will. It is my pleasure to be here. My function is to accompany the director of Hispanic ministry on reflecting on the mystery and call of being promoters, supporters, and accompaniments of the domestic family. What is the domestic family? Why is the answer for this moment in our church, in our world? So this is what I'm trying to do. Thank you.
Right now, thank you, Doctor. The Spanish group is registering right now, and they'll begin around 6 in the evening. We have our last thing, and it's this. At 5:30, we'll start Vespers because our hosting diocese is bringing the group that will lead us in prayer. So if we could please take this time to respond to these in your groups, I would appreciate it very much. We would all appreciate it very much.
Not so much what we're called may not be at the bottom. Start further along than where I thought. No, I do that. Yeah.
Do you have a full-time Hispanic ministry?
I'm the director.
Father Gate is the person that having increased is good, but it doesn't take up time. So that's where the diocese. We've only had just youth.
Our full-time youth ministry just started a couple of years. We had a director, a program coordinator, that kind of thing about how long. You were 12. This year I turned 10. Very blessed.
We have a lot of directors, but most of them are not full-time position at marriage and family life. It's not. The deacon who does it, but he doesn't work full-time. A few deacons we have that work full-time. We don't spend a lot of years over there in the marriage station. We have other positions. The newspaper, communication.
That's one thing that he was the liaison for the charismatic young leaders. That's what him and Father Noel and Father Riley wanted to promote. We had somebody in that position for a long time now, he's in life. My Clark's wife, Gloria. There, but staged out. I don't know how that was before I was there. Where's Mike?
I don't know, it was fixing somewhere. I guess they went to go see the people who are coming from this evening's program. I guess it's on. But the one thing that I thought was good is the bishop who talked from this diocese who has sort of worship. I thought that was good. I was gonna say I would like to see if he has what's called diocese
The sermon, oh, yes, I have notes to call the director.
Are they gonna give us these talks online?
There are already.
There are,
On the Facebook page.
on the Facebook page, on the second page. I'll have to. That's my download. Because, there were several of them. See, again, like, they have a priest who also does, that, we don't have that. We don't have that. No, I haven't. I saw there yet. Every time I went to see it.
Well, the thing is that you already, you check in, go and get your, and there's nothing to, you don't have to check the login. That's the only thing. So, but I don't know what we're gonna be able to accomplish tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is just yeah, okay. So Kelly's already said she'd like to leave by 8:30 or 9. Mass is at 7:30. Okay. So y'all